Creators Summit to anything like that. So if that's what you want from this stream, no. We're talking about evil in games. Evil in the game.
No. L, it's not that I have issues, it's that I am issues.
I
Big
said he
difference.
is issues. DK is issues.
Issues. Big difference. Big difference.
I was very particular with my language then. DK is issues. Right. Hello,
Yep.
Hungar. How you doing? You're right.
Hungar.
You're right.
Hey.
Yeah. Hey, Hungar.
Before we get to start about the topic in hand, anyway, let's talk about our games. Let's talk about what we've been doing. Last couple of Shadow of the Demon Lord games have had to be postponed because of Saxius's work-life conflicts. He's on holiday this week, so no Saxius. No Saxius. Hello to Kabuki Kid and hello Adam. Nice to see you two here as well.
Adam.
Wow. No, we haven't seen Adam.
Oh, wow. Hey, Adam. Yeah.
I did see him on another stream. I believe work's been getting in the way. But yeah, Saxius is on holiday. We played some
Enjoy
OSE
Saxius.
finally.
Yes.
Played some OSE finally. We played some OSE on Saturday. And
Well, played some OSE. You played for 8 hours.
Yeah. I logged on to Discord at about 1:45. Started chatting to people around that time. I just had the plan of setting up characters and giving a few ideas of what we wanted. And by about 2:45, people had got characters done. And we'd run through all the various points that we wanted to talk about. And well, why don't we just get started? So we did. And the game went on till nearly 11 o'clock at night. So it's the longest session I've done in a very, very long time. And
definitely would not have survived.
No.
My character probably would have outlived me, which is rare for OSE.
In true old school style, we had a total
of 5 deaths, was it?
No, 3 characters died. They got about 100 XP. Those that survived the whole lot got about 100 XP. They managed to kick in 2 goblins. Then they got beaten up by 6 goblins, and then they managed to box a larger group of goblins into a corridor. Those goblins' morale broke, and they ran. The initial fight with goblins was caused purely due to a 2 failed reaction rolls, one after the other. And one character death was because they were hanging around, making a lot of noise. I made a wandering monster check. It was a giant lizard, and the giant lizard chomped one of the fighters. In fact, it was Gene's
the dog
fighter.
lived. The dog lived. It was Tully. Tully got mauled to death. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
my paladin lived.
Your paladin lived, but your paladin was only there for a few hours.
2.5 hours?
Yeah. General Nuts magic user with comprehend languages managed to survive the entire session. He's the one who had the dog. Brian James's character survived. He was there for half the session. And Gingerbeard's thief survived as well by just not being involved in fights.
Yeah, he just didn't do anything. He's like, "Hey thief, do you want to listen out on the corridor? Nah. Hey thief, do you want to search for that treasure? Nah. Hey thief, do you want to poke around see if there's traps this 10-foot pole behind me, the big meat shield? Nah."
No, he took it in turns. He had his turn, then he made sure other people had a go before he had another go at doing it again. He wasn't going to take all of this.
I mean, he's being a smart thief. I'm not knocking him. It just I didn't see him do much. So,
yeah, he heard some noises early on. He was the one that I think appreciated when he heard the noises.
That's fair. That's fair.
But that was about it. But no, it was a good session. Real proper. They managed 17 rooms in total in that entire session. About 3 forays into the dungeon, proper old school style, really sort of careful, plodding, poking and prodding, running away, avoiding, discussing. It was good. It's good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So, any of you two played any of you two? You three? I can't count. I'm a goblin.
I have not.
No.
My Monday game again didn't happen, and then I'm permanently out of my Wednesday game. So no gaming.
Right. No.
My games this week were all canceled. I was bedridden for 3 days. So
Yeah, I just my Lords of Olympus game I played in. Some personal issues came up for the DM, and I only played in your OSC game. But I feel great playing a paladin again. So that 18
Good.
charisma, and I was like, I have to play a paladin. I have to play a paladin. I have to.
Yeah, if you get rolling 3d6 down the line, if you get an 18 on charisma.
Yeah. Bard or paladin.
even though you only need a 9.
Oh yeah, but no, dude, I've like +3 to reaction rolls now. I have a +2 to strength.
+2 to
Yeah.
reaction. 18 is +2.
Is it? Is it?
Yes.
Don't question the mage. The mage knows. That's me. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm checking.
I'm gonna be thrilled when my players are all able to settle down their lives. I mean, part of it this week was ours.
Oh yeah, right.
My wife was having a minor medical issue, and I hadn't slept for 5 days very well. Not because of her issue necessarily, but just for a number of other things. And so it just didn't happen. And then 2 of my players are having problems when you have a couple that are at home and they have issues in their home, not issues in their relationship. They have pet issues right now. So it's like,
hectic. Things are just hectic.
Yeah. So
And for those who come along on Fridays, I will be streaming this Friday. But last Friday was the charity race night, which raised roughly £700 for the football club and facilities
Round of
there.
applause.
And I won. I won. I got I won £128 on the last race.
Just as a side note, a little good news for you. Daniel here said he subbed to your channel, loving your Keep series.
Yeah, I just responded.
Nice.
Good
Leg
stuff.
is a
Good
thing.
stuff. But no, the last race, the first 7 races of the night, all 8 horses per race. First 7 races, you pay £5 to name a horse, and that was all done in advance. So each race was worth 40 quid to the club, and then you have a bit of a tote, which is biased towards the house, which earns money for the club as well. We had a raffle, but the last race of the night, all the horses are auctioned off. So to buy a horse as an owner for the last race of the night, it was all bidding, and I bought a horse. Cost me 20 quid to buy the horse.
But hey, you have a horse now.
I bought horse 1, knowing that the prices, from doing these before, the prices tend to be fairly flat for the first 4 or 5 horses. Then the last few, it goes up and up and up and up. And horse 8 sold for 70 quid. It's all donation to the club, but my horse came first, which meant I got the jackpot.
Yeah, but actually, speaking of stuff, I actually got my hands on Joan of Arc Time of Legend and the expansions for like €250 for the lot. Yeah. So
how much would that normally cost?
Oh, I saw on eBay the regular standard, like the actual first part of the main part of the game was going for like $330, and the other expansions going for like at least $99 each. So I was like, I lucked out.
Yeah, bit of a saving.
I lucked out. Yeah, and 3 of them were still in the plastic. They were unopened. So it was like
excellent.
Brand
new.
A
friend of mine's just picked up some Legend of the Five Rings stuff for about half the price it's going for on eBay, and that came in it's still shrink wrapped in plastic. Is
that the card game or the RPG?
The RPG.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, cool.
Oh, Adam, they play. I see the word Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh. Excellent.
Adam, you were going to link Saltmarsh and Night Below. Did that ever happen, or what's going on?
Anyhow, while Adam's going to type I'd imagine a lengthy response to all that.
Let's get 200 character response at most.
Let's get into our topic for tonight.
Cool.
Oh.
What's up?
Huh.
Burn the house down. I said, I'm done, guys. 5e players are too afraid of dying. Oh.
That's too bad.
Oh.
Wow, they were so.
The solution to that would have been to have the house be made of very damp wood, and it can't go up in flames.
I just want to know what 5e people are playing with, because it's not been my experience. I mean, they may be hard to kill, but they're not afraid to die. So.
Well, some are. I've met a few who
I don't doubt that they exist. I just wow. I keep hearing about all these horror stories, and I'm like, no, I just not run into it. But
yeah,
it's neither here nor there.
I mean, I've never seen people overly cautious in the games I've played. They've just were so insanely overpowered. So I had the opposite problem, where it's not that they were too afraid to die, it's just they were too powerful to actually die.
That's been my experience as a DM. I can basically dogpile killer encounters on them and all day, and they won't go down.
Nope.
No, I've literally seen 5e players melt down because they've died, or the DM didn't bail them out. So they do exist.
Yeah, no,
they do. Yeah,
I've seen that in AD&D though. So
True. Yeah. It's not unique to 5e, but it is more common.
And, scream at DMs across the table. No, I guess I'm lucky. I also play with a pretty limited group of people, so I know them pretty well. But I read about a lot of it, but I also don't know anybody who personally know anybody who's had that encounter either. That kind of that kind of a reaction. Anyhow, and aside,
I think Halakar's answer would be the suitable continuation from there, because the smugglers would react. They would have people find out what's going on. So, yeah, consequences.
Especially with the guy in town who's the one who's providing the weapons.
Oh, yes. Right.
Yeah, they'll drag him out to sea and make him walk the plank.
We are talking about evil tonight.
Well, smugglers are evil.
More specifically, evil player.
Make sure to do that.
What?
Don't forget the vampire voice. Geek.
What?
Don't forget that.
The vampire who likes your flesh.
Hannibal Lecter sounding vampire.
I ate her liver with some fava beans and a nice
But
Chianti.
the thing is, that vampire is an NPC. What the whole point of this stream is more along the lines of playing an evil game. Evil PCs, evil parties, evil quests, doing evil deeds. How many of us have played in that type of game? I will say now, I've played an evil character in a mostly good group. I'm currently playing a clearly evil goblin in an all goblin group, and they are clearly evil by human standards, but they don't really realize they're evil. So it's silly shenanigans, really. But apart from that, I've never played
from a certain point of view.
I've never played.
Then you are lost
with an evil party. Never DM'd for an all evil party or been in an all evil party who really know they're doing bad stuff. Any of you guys ever?
I've played one. Well, okay, I was playing in an apocalypse game, and I drew inspiration from Fallout New Vegas's Boone and Caesar. And if you guys know anything about Fallout, which I know maybe very few might, at least in this circle.
I love Vegas. New Vegas was my favorite of the
Yeah, it's really good, isn't it? So I basically had the premise where my character's wife was murdered and his son was taken by these tribals, and he wanted to get rid of them, either get them out of the region or just kill them all. And he would like do grisly displays of their bodies. He would kill them on sight, no mercy. He hated them. And he was even getting to the point where he's going to like start recruiting all the tribals to take over the region, and just start drilling them in military. But unfortunately, the game died before this coalesced. So, oh well. So,
yeah, I have not played evil characters really before. I've played in parties with them. I've run games where characters were evil, but I've never run an evil character actually. I've played characters who perhaps were unintentionally bad, but like I had a character who made deals with bad people, but I've never really in fact, I've been accused in the past of playing characters that are maybe too good. Even playing in World of Darkness games, I always managed to play relatively good characters.
I've both played and run game. I mean, obviously, you guys know I'm running Night Below with an evil game. I recap that on the channel, but I've played evil characters too. I mean, yeah, it's fun once in a while. It's interesting to explore that perspective. My big claim to fame playing evil was I had a lawful evil dwarf. My friend was playing a ranger. This was 2nd edition, so he was good. And I ended up corrupting him and costing him his ranger status, but the player, unfortunately, wasn't quite on board. He couldn't figure out why he'd lost his ranger status when he betrayed the rangers to protect a fellow PC, because he was halfway in character, halfway in game mind. So he had a bit of a meltdown. So wasn't the finest hour there. The player could now do it, but back then he was like, wait, but I was protecting a fellow player. Nothing. There should be no consequences.
No.
Exactly as the DM said.
Like every time I play an evil character, I fully expect the fact that if either I turn good or if I lose, I'm like, yeah, I kind of had it coming. Yeah.
His total move was to take me out. Absolutely, I was prepped for it. I knew, and then when he ended up supporting me and fighting a fellow ranger off who had come to take me in for crimes, it's like okay, perfect. And even the DM was surprised, like, wow, you corrupted him.
Yeah, so, I do get to play. I don't think evil characters as NPCs because I run.
I don't think you so much corrupted him as he would just kind of blindly fell into the trap. You know, corruption kind of implies that he chose to do it somewhat willingly.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But it was interesting.
Led astray, maybe
led astray, yes.
I would
excuse me.
Yeah. The only other character I can claim was evil, but it was more like a hammy kind of evil, was a tiefling I played. But I do remember in a lot of the 5e groups I played in that if you were to look at them in a vacuum, the kind of stuff that they were doing was fairly questionable, if not outright like I remember one encounter in the 5e group before I got kicked out was they found this sentient bug, and it gained sentience by eating the flesh of humanoids. Now, it restrained itself to the dead, but all I had to ask it was one question. And I said, well, what happens if you run out of dead things to eat? And he says, I didn't want to lose my intelligence. And I was like, this thing is evil. We got to kill it. Like, it just the calculus was over. And everyone was like, but is it evil, though? And I'm like, yes. Why would you suffer this thing to live? It just said it would eat you if it had to. So I think we also have to remember that maybe when players say evil, we're kind of operating on
Oh, it's such a broad description.
I mean, in my general experience running players who are playing evil characters or playing in parties with evil characters, usually what they mean is asshole. But
yeah. Well, that's the first point I really want to come to is
a good segue then.
Yeah, because to have evil characters in the party, or to play an all evil game, you need some gaming maturity.
Mm.
If a player that you don't know, or haven't gamed, or haven't or isn't particularly experienced at gaming, says they're going to play an evil character, quite often it is a bit of a red flag, because I would only allow people to play evil if I knew I could trust them, if I knew they would be mature about it. And if I knew that they would grasp the idea that just being evil for evil's sake gets quite mundane and dull very quickly. How would a character who just murdered every innocent person he saw survive to adulthood? They wouldn't.
Be hunted down and butchered.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you've got to use a bit of maturity and a bit of common sense with your eveling.
Yeah, I mean, even
or expectation of short lifespan, right? Like, you can understand that. You're living fast, you're dying hard, because that's who the character is. Maybe he's low intellect, low wisdom. He's like, whatever. But
I will point out to
a short run.
I will point out to DM James, I don't mean he needed to eat the corpses to live. He needed to eat them to retain his intelligence. There's a difference. He didn't want to lose his intelligence, and that's where I was like drawing the line.
I would say, I mean, the point about, why are they still alive if they're just a complete, douche waffle, then, I mean, even amongst humanoid tribes, if you're the one who doesn't work with the group, even in a chaotic, sense, it's the might makes right. So sure, you can be as crazy as you want, but somebody's probably going to knock you down a peg or two or three or into the ground, because that's how your society works.
That's how it works.
Yeah. Even amongst the chaotic races, the chaotic evil races, you're going to find at least some level of of planning and intelligence. It may not be the best, and it's not going to be law, but they're not going to be. I mean, they might be raging psychopaths, but I'm sure even orcs have people that they look at kind of funny and maybe move to the other side of the table when it comes time to eat if they sit down. So
I mean, let's look at the Lord of the Rings for an example. What happens when when a group of orcs want to steal the legs off the halflings? Well, the Uruk-hai just go, looks like meat's back on the menu, boys. Like, if there's disruption in the group, even if they're evil aligned, they're not going to tolerate this. So,
well, I think it could also be argued whether or not the Uruk-hai were chaotic, though. They were
they're probably lawful.
They were the more trained and
more militant. Yeah.
They're the hobgoblins. They're the hobgoblins, basically.
Yeah. And that's kind of where hobgoblins and D&D come from.
Probably.
That's a reasonable analogy too.
I would also like to propose, though, what if, like, we also consider maybe, like, if, like, looking at the evil alignment as you're just playing for Team Evil because, like, maybe you found it as the best way to preserve law overall, but you could be moral to a degree on an individual level. Like, you behave politely, you help people as much as you can, but you still say serve as Modius.
Think of Strahd. He's going to come out there being all polite and dripping with character and panache and stuff like that.
No. I'm not even presenting as, like, I mean, as in he's genuinely compassionate. He just works for the bad guys.
Well, like, real quick, and now that you mentioned it reminds me, I have played a couple of evil characters in, like, superhero games but I don't really consider them evil because they're like comic book evil. But in those cases, you're playing the person who's evil because his sense of right is bent. Yeah,
it's important to separate morality from personality, because an evil person can be exactly that: charming and off-putting and charismatic and good manners, well-mannered. Yeah,
all the mob bosses are all about family, and they love their kids, and they have a wife, and they're loyal to their cousin and their brother, but they'll kill people.
But they'll be nasty.
But I mean, like, what if
welcome to Ravenloft. I hope you'll find your stay most comfortable. Now, if you'd like to get out of those wet things, you'll find that dinner is being served in 3 hours from now. Make yourself comfortable. Come through to the lounge. You'll find fine wine, fine brandy, and just take a seat.
Well, just about every Bond villain.
No, I mean, like, I mean, what I mean is, if you see someone who would if we were to ascribe, like, traditionally the alignment, someone who behaves like a neutral good character but serves like lawful evil people. That's what I'm saying.
That I've always been. I mean, an evil character is not just going to go around, tra-la-lying through villages and lopping people's heads off. They can act totally good. I mean, look at history. I mean,
but I mean, they actually internally they feel guilty about the bad things that they do. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Oh, well,
that creates a character conflict. Yeah, I mean,
that's a good character doing bad things.
Okay,
that's a whole other matter. I mean, yeah, again, it's important to define what it is to be evil, like when we're talking about a game, so you have those parameters for play as well, because we will argue this could be a 4-day stream just trying to tell each other what evil is,
the philosophy of evil.
Exactly. And so I mean, I say this to all my players. It's like, this is how I define evil in my games. So when you play the alignment, when you choose your alignment, the parameters. You don't have to agree with it, but this is how I interpret it. And as the judge of the world, you have to keep that in mind. I think that's a key distinction for playing evil in the game.
The killer. I know who you're talking about. Damn. No, I would say he's lawful evil because he has a there is a malice to him, because like if you see him in the first scene where we have him, he's like with the handcuffs strangling the sheriff, and he's like smiling as he's doing it. Like he feels emotions, so he is a psychopath. So I don't think he feels any like the only time he'll ever feel remorse about the coin flipping is more so that it's like he's an arbiter of fate. So he leaves their fate in like he leaves what happens to them to the whims of fate if they're not his target. But that's more of a lawful thing more than a good thing. He doesn't care about who he has to kill. He doesn't care because he kills the wife.
It's important to create these distinctions. Yeah, that character from No Country is definitely, he's a psychopath. He has no emotion, but that doesn't mean all evil characters are cut off from their feelings. Your bog standard evil character will have the full range of emotions. They'll fall in love. They'll have attachments. They'll have guilt. They're not mindless automatons who can do bad things and just sneer it away. The real trick is in terms of the play, giving them that parameter. It's like, what is evil? What does it mean? And God, there's so much, like in D&D specifically. This is why I love the alignment system, is because you've got a nice 9-point balance, and then it's not sorry, coughing. It's not laid out so much in this way. I wish it was better laid out in the books, but you really have to look at it in 2 prongs as well. So you've got the cosmological,
which is law, neutrality, and chaos,
and good, neutral, and evil, because the cosmological is a tangible force. It's not just an abstract philosophical concept. These, lawful good is an actual thing that exists, but it's, to the average layperson, it's like, okay, but what does that mean to me on this world where I have to fight for my supper?
I'm starving under a good king or a bad king, necessarily in some cases.
So you need also a pragmatic presentation of the alignments. And so what does it mean to be a mortal being on this world, an insect in the cosmological war? And what is your point of view on that? And I don't know if you guys have watched
the DM really to
decide,
to decide, to make clear to the players, to make those definitions. Is evil a personal thing, or is it a driving force in the world, as you say?
And it's both, but for a player character to glom onto a concept to run their character, you need a good defined practical explanation.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I mean, and you also got to think about how you're going to present evil in your campaign. Say, for example, you're running an evil campaign. What constitutes the evil in it, and what is the purpose? Will the characters be working for an evil team, evil monsters, evil NPCs, evil deities, or are they independent contract killers, or however? Because that would constitute evil as well.
All of the above.
Or are they just purely selfish? Are they just in it for themselves? Are they just grave robbers with no real morals as to how they go about it? And all of these, I think all of these are interesting aspects that can be brought into a campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. All those are out. Yeah, exactly.
So do you, Dr. Jones.
The word you touched on there is...
I remember that.
The word you touched on there, John, was, and I've used this in my videos and in my games, is selfish. That is, for me, the key defining aspect of evil characters. They are self-serving. That doesn't necessarily mean personal self-serving. You can still have an evil character who's fighting for an ideology. It's beyond them, but they will go through any and they will go through, like, the ends justify the means. They will do anything to accomplish their goal, or to get what they want, to achieve their desire. And I think that is, for me, the simplest way for players to grasp that concept. It's like, you are out for yourself, but that doesn't mean you can't have bonds, you can't have friends. You simply have fewer compunctions, but you will have to look at your choices and the consequences of your actions. A wise evil character might look and say, yes, this action gets me what I want, but it costs me too much, I won't do it. Right? Whereas a good person might moralize, say, no, this is an immoral action, I won't do it. Whether or not
also inform the how they go about things, because, like you mentioned, the wise evil guy would say it would cost me too much. Therefore, I shall get somebody else to accomplish the goal for me, becoming even more evil because he's a manipulative sod. It's like, if I invade that country, I'm a horrible man. However, if I convince their neighbors that they have a good cause to invade the country, therefore destabilizing them, and then I can march in and liberate them. Hey, I'm the hero.
And then create a counter offensive against the invaders and take over that country. Hey,
that's lawful evil to a T.
Yes.
Yep.
That's intelligent lawful evil as well.
What alignment
you could
evil I would
you could argue that could actually be also neutral evil to a degree. You could,
yeah, but
because
the amount of planning
you could argue
kind of speaks.
Neutral evil can, I think they're obolites or I don't remember, are fairly good at planning as well. They plot. And
I think it depends, and I think that would depend on the intelligence and the long-term plan of the neutral evil character. But that's almost natural behavior for a lawful evil character.
I know it is. Yeah.
Look at the wonderful web of alliances and hereditary connections throughout the neighboring kingdoms and orchestrate that. It's like, it only takes killing one man to start a world war.
What's Harkonnen?
That's Dune.
Baron Harkonnen.
Oh right, I haven't read
Flying
Dune.
Fat Man. Come on.
I haven't seen the Dune films or read the books, so I have no idea who it is.
Oh, you're missing out. It's good.
I know. I've been meaning to.
But I don't subscribe to the notion that evil was always looking for a time and a place to backstab their friends and acquaintances.
No,
not evil will just as readily be kind and reward
evil men.
people. Yeah, exactly. And although when push comes to shove, there's that possibility. It's just not going to be the first course of action at every turn.
Very evil men have had very honorable tendencies. without calling out specific ones. But
an evil man who believes in honor and face, like like a samurai, let's say an evil samurai, it's all about face and honor and how you look. He will kill himself honorably so that his legacy persists. It's like, oh, look, he died honorably. Yeah, that still benefits him because he looks good in the society.
Yeah. And look at Jaime Lannister, for example.
I mean, throughout all the comics, Lex Luthor conducts himself well enough to where he ends up getting elected president. Because he can always pin it on somebody else and make sure he's clean.
Mm-hmm.
He does all sorts of public works. He gives to the city. He's just he always makes Superman look like the bully. So I mean, it's a good example of an evil character, actually.
I will also say that you could argue, though I would say he's more lawful neutral, but Tywin Lannister, you could say he's a lawful evil character.
He 100% is 100%.
Yeah, like even I haven't. This isn't in the TV show, and I haven't read the books, but someone told me he says this in the books. When he started going bald, he literally said to his barber to just keep every morning shave off the hair in his head because he said no half measures.
Well, it's more than that. Tywin Lannister is interesting because in his history, I read the expansion book where they talk about how his rise to power and
his father was weak. Yeah,
his father was weak, and it was destroying their house. So he took
the
control.
Laughing Lion.
But the thing that Tywin Lannister did was he was smart. He realized that without the small folk, you weren't going to collapse. The king, their realm would collapse. So he was lawful evil. He was all about his legacy, and that's the front and center. Everything is about the legacy of the family. Boom. There's your lawful evil.
To be fair, what the why I say is more neutral is there's like a twinge, I think, of goodness in him, because he does say, at least in the show, to his son about the murder of spoilers for a 10-year-old show, whatever, of Robb Stark, and he says, what is more tell me how it's more honorable to kill one man and his family in a feast than it is to send 10,000 men into the battlefield to die.
Hey, but
he says that straight to the guy's face.
Oh, I'm aware, but that's an evil man rationalizing a very cowardly deed, right? Having his rival assassinated. I mean, and that's the philosophical debating. He
would argue that heroics versus cowardice is just the veneer that people use to justify their side winning. You know what I mean? He basically says, well, how is it moral to kill 10,000 men? How?
And that's
in a pointless war.
That's because he's smart. He knows how to justify it, and that is his point of view. But what I was about to say was in his backstory and his rise to power, he made a point of protecting the small folk and even ruling against fellow nobles, much to their annoyance, when it was just, because he realized, because this is the lawful part, his rule would end if he didn't have the support of the small folk. It wasn't about protecting the people. It was about protecting his legacy,
the family,
using those people, but it just happened to be just for them, right?
Yeah, I will also point out that
it was his motive and methodology that made him evil.
It's the methodology.
Like I'm reading,
that's important.
I'm reading through Machiavelli, and he like the prince, and he is very Machiavellian, because he would subscribe to, if you're going to do your atrocities when you're conquering a new territory, be swift and brutal to send the point home. Like if you drip feed your atrocities and your cruelties, people are going to hate you. They are going to hate you for it. But if you do it really, really fast, they are far less likely to rise up against you. And that's kind of what Tywin does. Because what did he do with the reigns of Castamere? The reigns of Castamere. He literally just, you guys made fun of me, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to board up your castle and flood it from the inside out. And anytime people get thoughts of rebelling against him, he just sends a bard and sings the song.
It was more than that they insulted him as they were plotting a coup.
They're coup, and they were stealing money from his father, but it was really.
But that exemplifies evil, because he didn't. A lawful might say, okay, we got to give him a trial and we got to accuse them of this treachery, and he's like, nope, we'll just murder them.
Yeah, they're insubordinate. So
So, evil then in gaming terms, running an evil campaign, playing an evil campaign, playing an evil character. I have to say, it is something. I mean, I've always said it, so I've never run an evil campaign, but I would actually relish that opportunity as a DM, just to see how the dynamics play out, and to see if it's a test for the players as much as anything. It's you give. They're like, oh, we're evil. Is that a complete free reign? But then I think they have to realize that actions still have consequences, and thus they have to play, if anything, more carefully. And I would like to see how a group of players would react and how they would, how the campaign would develop, while trying to keep a sense of verisimilitude in place in terms of those actions having consequences, having the law after them, having them trying to keep a low profile, having to have them disguise themselves in places where they're known, and go through all those sort of that extra level, almost extra level of self-protection that would have to come into play.
Well, that seems to me to be not just evil, but criminal too, because if the law is already after them.
I mean, I would think a lot of, if it's an all evil campaign, because they would become, I think over time they would become criminals. I think that's almost inevitable.
Yeah,
not necessarily.
They would. It would even. I would say I agree with Geek on this, that it would go so far. They might even start to corrupt them in more overt ways. Not just that they'd start becoming criminals. They might start becoming monstrous. Like, not like philosophically monstrous. I mean, like, they might physically start corrupting into demons if they go too far.
Well, that's an interesting thought.
Well, that's a mechanic baked right into Ravenloft, right? The more evil, evils you get corrupted. But I'm
go ahead. Sorry.
I was about to say, I'm just thinking of the standard run of the mill campaign, as opposed to, hey, we're making an evil group go nuts with evil. Play the more measured. Hey, you're just people, right? You're all happen to be evil, and that's what happened with my Night Below group. It didn't start out, hey, let's make evil. It just, they just happen to be a mix of neutrals and evil. It's like, all right, well, let's see how this plays out. And
the problem
I would have with it for those later videos, aren't we, to find out, because you've hinted that something's happened.
Oh yeah, it does come to a head, but
I say, in my mind, the reason why I have a problem with evil campaigns is, like, if I were to do it, which I would never do, because I couldn't enjoy it. Because in my mind, if you're going to commit to evil, right, as an alignment, that means you are firmly on the side of the most depraved and destructively malicious creatures in the multiverse, whether consciously or not. The alignment itself has seeded itself into your soul, and it has firm grip. And if you're doing that, whether lawful, neutral, or chaotic, you're doing really morally reprehensible stuff that I would only reserve for monsters. And like, if you're doing that stuff, I don't ever want to run that. And I can't justify, if it's a neutral, if you guys are just like scalawags and bandits, like, sure, that's fine.
And you can do that. Here's where, and that's exactly the kind of the direction most evil campaigns talk about. It's like, oh, we can't go, and this is where I like to sort of stop and say, no, evil campaigns don't always have to go to the worst of the worst of the worst concept of evil. It's a completely valid interpretation for sure. You do have that carte blanche, but it doesn't have to be. Right?
I know. This is just how gray, this is just how my cosmology works, because I can't envisage you, like, just being neutral and doing some shady stuff and be called evil. And if you call yourself evil, you would have to do some of the most, because I like, when I call you good in a game, like, you have the good alignment, that means you are so saintly as to be like unto God.
Well, again,
like, you'd have to be. Yeah,
that's
but
the
that's just me.
same. That's the same trap. You know, people say, "Well," because I've had players. It's like it's hard to be good. You know, it's like they whine. It's like I don't want to be good because it's too limiting. I don't want to be evil because it's too mean.
Well, like, yeah, I would be like, yeah, but you get rewarded for being that limited.
Good is a moral standard, but it doesn't have to be saintly. You still have a
That's
moral
true.
standard. Not everybody is a paladin. Not every lawful good is a paladin. A paladin takes
know.
it to the saintly level, but you can have great disagreements between two lawful goods, a lawful good fighter, say, and a lawful good paladin, because the paladin will not cross lines. You have to be the saintly extreme. But somebody else who's a little more tempered, lawful good, might you know, they might say, well, no, you're going too far. Or
yeah, this is kind of why I don't like the 9-prong. This is exactly why, because it's a needless thing of that's why I prefer the 3-prong and say, no, if most people are neutral and they can do good things, they can be moral people, but they haven't reached the level of goodness that is law. And if you are lawful, people say you as like a demigod, an avatar of the highest moral standards. Whereas I would just say, if we're going 9-prong, I'm just like, most people are neutral and they can still do good things,
absolutely.
But they're not capital G good. They don't have like the law, like they've been blessed by a lawful good God.
The important thing to remember is that 95% of the population, and we'll talk humanity, we won't talk about the other species, but humanity will be true neutral. That is the default alignment for humans.
Oh,
true neutral. The good and evil people are the outliers. They're the rarity. They're the exceptions. They're the ones who have made a moral stance, a moral choice to follow a certain belief system.
I just want to dive in for a moment and say hello, Antonio. For those who don't know,
hey, Antonio
is in chat at the moment. He was my first DM when I came back to D&D around 2011, 2012. So
a little celebrity.
Yeah, nice to see you, Antonio. Antonio, if ever you feel like joining us on a stream, you're more than welcome to dive in and have a chat. He knows a fair bit about nerdery, does Antonio? I don't think I've ever seen anyone with as big an RPG collection either.
Oh yeah, like Helicar, I agree. Not every evil likes other evil. I completely agree. I never said that at all. You can be like, two paladins can be lawful good and fucking despise each other.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, they could be the high. Yeah, they could just detest each other because like one is, you know, the even hand, the merciful, and the other is like scourge all evil, but they're still lawful good.
But they will also respect the elements of their morality, their moral and ethical.
Yeah,
basis.
They're brothers. Yeah, they're brothers. They both fight for law and goodness, and that's all they care about. But they just don't like them on a personal level.
And they'll also know that even though they don't like each other, they can trust each other. And that's the advantage of being aligned with good, is that you are trustworthy, full stop.
Okay, for the next 5 minutes, I mean, I've played one evil character in the last 10 years or so. And this was my necromancer in a 5e game. He started off neutral. And I wanted to portray sort of a descent into a selfish madness. And by the time the campaign ended, he was very much neutral evil. But for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to go into his mode and be him. So keep talking.
Okay. All right. But the I don't know. What I don't like, I think in the main crux of why I don't like these kind of philosophical debates. Because
who cares what you don't like?
I do. So get bent.
Are you important? Are you important?
I'm important to me and my family.
Do you understand who you're talking to? It is I.
No, and I don't care.
Ferdinand Fiddleweed, the greatest brain on this planet.
Now, worthless little worm who raises the dead, and I, as a lawful good paladin, will smite the evil out of you. Goodbye.
Oh,
that's what I was saying.
Oh, aren't we the big hoity-toity one?
I am Skittles, and I'm Santa's holy helper, sir, and you are on his naughty list.
That makes me so scared. That makes me so scared.
Good.
I don't think
you're going to have a lump of coal.
You're talking to, but hey,
no, and I don't care.
Well, you will care. You will care. Right.
Nah.
I do hope you've all donated to this this cause of this stream tonight, because food doesn't buy itself, you know. I mean, you've only got $2, have you, in your pocket?
No. Don't listen to him. He's just going to waste it on the undead. He's just going to waste it on the undead.
It's in my pocket than it is in your pocket, because I'm more important than you. Anyway, we have Elfbait. You've been quiet.
Oh, I've been busy doing stuff.
Been enjoying you tormenting the Dark Knight.
Important?
No, he's not. I've got the biggest shit-eating grin on my face. This is great. I love it. This is great.
I do want to talk to. I mean, you're about to talk about how you hate the philosophical debates, and I sort of agree. I don't like it when the debates take over the game.
Philosophy is so tedious. It's actions that matter.
I love the philosophical discussions. I don't like it when the debate derails the game.
Anyway, I see we've been joined by a gentleman called Elfbait. You have elven blood in you, do you?
No. I eat elves. That's why I beat them.
Oh, you eat elf. Now I must I must sit down and have a talk to you sometimes. I found elf is rather tender, isn't it?
The best elf recipes come from the 3 Kreen. They find them a delicacy.
Have you ever tried eating the 3 Kreen themselves? I find that
tastes like shrimp.
Ooh, lovely, marvelous. That's rather.
I love how Elfbait is getting along with the neutrally evil necromancer. I love it.
That's okay.
Those who can summon the undead from you, young DK. Is that a mocking tone?
When pursuing our own endeavors. So.
Anyway, that's how I portrayed my neutral evil necromancer. He was the most pedantic, awkward, condescending, annoying, demeaning, annoying.
I'm going to say a bad word. I'm just going to say, in a word, he was a cunt. That's what he was.
That's got me demonetized. I knew this stream wouldn't be suitable for me.
Oh, it's demonetized at 0.3 when I said the word "fuck," dude. So you're good. You're golden, man. Yeah. You were demonetized ages ago. Sorry.
Anyway.
Hello,
yes, the demi-lich.
I understand there was a discussion of evil and nobody invited me.
Now,
because you...
Now then, Mr. Ace - Eric, I've heard some good things about you. And
well, of course you have.
Yes, and you have clearly access to interesting secrets that
yeah, none that you're getting.
Oh, are you sure?
Earn your way up, worm. Now apologize to the nice DK for those harsh words.
Excuse me. I don't apologize to anybody.
You know, for a demi-lich, I like you.
You may want to give those secrets out, or I'm going to disseminate them across the multiverse.
You've interrupted me. I don't apologize to anyone who is inferior to me. That is the thing.
Okay, that's a fair policy. I'll give you that.
Obviously, I would apologize to someone as learned as your good self, though.
Brown nose.
No, I think you'll find my nose is quite white.
No,
not for long.
But,
don't worry.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you can't really bury it up his ass since he's a fucking skeleton. So
my ass disintegrated 5,000 years ago.
There it is.
Here's Omanel.
Omanel, hey man.
Hello. I unfortunately missed the first hour because I had a dental appointment. So
yeah, that's fine.
So
you didn't miss much.
What's going on? All I heard was apologizing to an inferior being, and all I could think is when they can steal your soul, you apologize wherever necessary.
Yeah. Well, unless you're a high level paladin, like I'm going to be.
Thing is, DK's the inferior being. That's the thing.
The public DK is he has no soul, which I guess comes into the inferior being part. Only low animals don't have souls. No.
Wait, question. Can half-elves be raised from the dead?
That's a good question. I would say no.
Like, I know elves can't, unless you resurrect them with the wand of resurrection. But can half-elves?
Well, see, my view on this is that I would treat them like the MERP stuff, which is permanent death. You're gone. No, that's not entirely true.
Yeah, that's right. Mazes? Would you know about this? In AD&D, is there a ruling on half-elves being able to be revived?
I'm going to say the official rule, I can't think of offhand, but I've always allowed it. It's only pure-blooded elves that are denied.
Oh, okay. I'll have to go digging through my DMG. I just figured
I'd have
since
to
you're like
dig
an
up for the official
encyclopedia.
rule.
Yeah.
Wait,
I just thought.
I'm at the point where I've been playing my way for so long. It's like I have to double check once in a while just to remind myself what's official and what's
to be honest.
I'm the same.
I'm only running raw for certain wizardry as an experiment. I would probably once I get good enough, I'm just gonna do whatever I want anyway. So.
Well, you know what?
A few people have joined chat in the last few minutes. I'm just going to say hello to Jade's here. It's been a little while. Shadow and Sun's here.
Oh.
Mobius is here. Anybody else? Anybody else who's popped in? I haven't said hello to yet. No, Saurian. I don't think I said hello to you either. Calvinoni didn't say hello to you either. I really am terrible. I'm quite evil. Hello, DM James as well. Nice to see you pop in.
Well, you know what? With L, he's talking top or bottom. No, it's left or right.
I was thinking that as well. I was actually thinking of that as well. If I had to choose, I'd go top because at least I'd be alive.
All right, let's get. I mean, we haven't gone off track at all, really. We're still talking about evil and Saxius, who is very disappointed at not being able to be on this stream tonight because. He has.
I have opened the spreadsheet in his honor.
Can you speak with Dead a half elf?
I think we need to
that's a topic for another thing.
And have a custom flag made that's just a big spreadsheet and send it to Saxius to fly in front of his house.
Yes. Oh my God. Instead of calling it the Minutemen, we'd call it the Minute Men. Like minute.
I would say that's an excellent idea.
Oh. Yes.
That joke was
you have
evil.
to communicate via basic, Visual Basic. It's one of the languages you have to know.
But anyway, back to evil. But the point that I was driving at is that the reason why I like just law, neutrality, and chaos, or just good, neutral, and evil, is I don't want the players to. Basically, I want them to feel unambiguously good about the things they do. If they're fighting against things that are chaotic, and all chaotic creatures are unvarnished, objectively, completely, and irredeemably evil, then in their minds, it will be, they won't have to worry about, is it wrong to kill the orc babies? Who cares? They're going to be evil anyway. So, they're just going to grow up and kill people. It's fine. Just end them.
So
and that's fair. That's fair for your game. The reason I like
Eli, say that again. I didn't catch that.
Said, so you're lazy?
I mean, I leave the nuance for humanity.
Fight for a second here.
I leave the more nuanced moral creatures to the elves, the dwarves, the halflings, and the humans. I leave it, and the gnomes. Even though I think they're all fucking abominations.
I think if you just make them evil at the very beginning as evil babies, they just come over and they're you just make the babies evil and then it's not really a problem.
They have glowing demonic eyes and fangs, so
And they're eating the flesh of an innocent puppy. They're eating the flesh of an innocent puppy or vomiting up the skeletal remains.
Well,
I poke fun, but I mean, it's when it comes down to it, I mean, most of your objections and arguments are very much centered in your
game, the way you want to
play.
Yes.
Just the general concepts of. So
obviously, I'm not saying mine's even the right way to do it. It's just right for me.
And
anyway, I want to move on to the next thing. Go on, Sean.
I was just about to say, and then it's the opposite reasons why I like the 9-point system. Is I like when you have the lawful and the chaotic, even though they're of the same moral bent, good or evil or whatever, but hitting that conflict, and so they have the similarity, like the lawful and the chaotic good. They're both honest and forthright and charitable. They'll fight for the little guy, but the way they want to go about it and do it. And we had this we had this in my game where they captured a small tribe of kobolds who surrendered. Morale broke right away, and the paladin is like, all right, bind them up. They're our prisoners. And the chaotic good guy was like, let's butcher them now before they get away. and they were like arguing back and forth, and meanwhile the others are like, let's watch these kobolds while these guys have their little fight, right? And that creates fun conflict, not player conflict, but character conflict at the table.
Well, the other part that comes down to it is, and I know that Sean and I have discussed this, is, the way that we look at law and good is law is constrained in certain ways, and then chaos allows the other part. And so it's not that you need a combination of both. And if one dictates, then you get no change, and the other one allows no structure. You're like, well, wait a minute, neither side is good.
Yeah, I
that's
know
why I
it
like
was mentioned
good
earlier.
and evil.
As mentioned earlier, Dune, the entire Dune universe functions on law. Basically, law and evil and good either way, because even the bad guys are always having to dance that dance and act within the constraints of the society that they live in. Otherwise, they know they're screwed. Like, you can't just go murder people. You have to go through 8 different agents and not let it track back to you. Or do it under official rules of engagement, official rules of revenge, what Canley, vendetta.
Well, but I like that aspect. But then the Baron and the, but then it also makes it more interesting when you break those rules, like when the Sardaukar are being used. Well, guess what? You have to keep that hidden. Otherwise, everyone will turn against you.
Well, yeah, so that's still working lawful good. That's our lawful evil. I mean,
Yes.
And that's the thing.
The
chaotic evil is just going to be, more like, what, I don't know. I'm failing to pull a good one right now. But
well, chaotic is the individualist, but they're still not stupid. They'll look, it's like, oh, well, I mean, I don't like these rules, but if I don't follow them, they're going to slaughter me, so I'd better play along. I don't agree with them. I don't like them, but I'm going to go along with it because I don't want to be ripped apart.
The more I think about it, the more I'm I'm really failing to see where like movies and TV present a lot of truly chaotic evil characters. Yeah, they're very much like their lawful characters more.
Going back to Game of Thrones, we had Cersei Lannister as a great chaotic evil.
That's true.
I'd say she's more neutral evil than chaotic evil.
But her son is chaotic evil, for that.
Well, Joffrey for sure, but
Joffrey is, Oh, absolutely, he's chaotic evil. As is
Cersei as well. Cersei is subject to her whims. She's more tempered and more intelligent than Joffrey, but she's still chaotic. She's
one of those chaotic characters that acts lawful when it suits her.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one. I was, like I said, I was having a hard time thinking of any. I know they're out there. It's just like, I'm like, really? I can't. My brain's just blanking. But
there is a fair argument she's neutral, but I put her in chaotic just based on various examples of her behavior.
I wanted to do, because I haven't come to these yet, and I want to keep chat involved somewhat. I've starred a few comments as we've been going down. So before we have a slight change of tack, I just want to bring up a few of the comments I've got starred. Whether you play evil or not depends on the system. Depends on the system you're playing. I've mentioned Shadow of the Demon Lord, Warhammer Fantasy role playing. I will say in the game I played, I wouldn't say we were evil, rather than we were morally grey.
Well, don't they have like five?
So I will point out. I will
evil and chaos. Don't they have those 5 in Warhammer?
I will point out though. You have to remember that James also would argue from the position of, and I'm not trying to speak from, but this is just what I've learned from him, is that if you are not good, you are, even if you're neutral, since you are not good, you are in some way aiding evil, and therefore you are evil. So he operates in a very good or evil way of looking at things.
Right.
So.
Okay.
And I think that, I know that Sean and I have discussed in our different views of looking at evil versus good. And I've always looked at as good as altruistic, neutral as selfish, and then evil is malicious. Now, he's looked at it a bit differently, but that's the way I've looked at it is you don't have to hurt someone, but I will do so because I am evil. That's what I represent it usually as.
That's what I've chatted to you about that before, and I'm very much with Sean on that, where evil is the self, and I say good is altruistic. Yeah.
Nurgle is evil.
Nurgle is happy. He's the only one that's actually happy.
Yeah,
still.
so is the Joker, but he's still fucking evil.
No, the Joker's a perfect chaotic evil. There's a
Yes, he
Joker
is.
is
Yeah.
just insane.
Ramsey Bolton,
the crime,
good
the
example of
yeah,
chaotic evil.
Ramsey Bolton. I said him earlier. Yeah, another great example of chaotic evil.
Next
Yeah.
comment
Yeah,
I was
I
looking
know,
to.
I know these characters now.
And this refers to evil in games, and I quite like this comment from Kabuki Kid. I played once in an all evil group. It was a 2E game. It was fun for a minute.
2E, of course, the most evil of editions. I'm joking. It's not 4.
No, but that if the game is not well set up and the players are not either experienced or I'd say not mature or not well briefed enough on what's expected, then yes, it could easily very quickly descend into not fun. I think it could be fun if it's played in a quite a well prepared and non-chaotic manner.
Yeah. If Spoonie pointed this out, if you're he basically lays out ground rules, and I tend to agree with him. First rule, he says you also got to be honest. If you're playing evil, you have to tell everyone. You can't not tell them. 2, it has to be lawful evil. Neutral evil and chaotic evil are straight out. Number 3, if there's a lawful good cleric or a paladin in the group, no, it won't work. It can't work. Now, I don't necessarily agree with him on that point, but we're going to come to the topic of mixing alignments in groups. So, save that for then. One thing I'm going to come to Ian's comment now. Some of our more memorable and notorious characters were the evil ones. They just stood out amongst the others. And that's one of the, I think that's one of the draws to me of playing an evil game, because I think if it's done right, it would be very memorable because it is something different. 99 campaigns out of 100. You are being the hero. You are saving the world. You are defeating the evil monsters. And what sort of moments stand out in gaming? It's often those darker ones, a character death maybe, or something really bad happening to a character.
Things going horribly wrong.
Things
Very
going
few
horribly
people
wrong.
just sit there and talk lengthy stories about when everything went perfectly and it went down without a hitch.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
I'm going to bring this up, which is...
Besides, the evil people always have the cool uniforms and the neat toys.
Well, I think the problem that I have with it is usually in D&D is evil is fine if there's a lot of repercussions for being so. And that's the problem that I have with a lot of it is growing up as a kid, people wanted to be evil or chaotic evil because I can do whatever I want. Or a lot of would say, well, it's chaotic neutral. I'm like, no, if you're being malicious, you're not neutral. But
folks talk about lawful stupid. Well, that's the chaotic stupid.
well, it's an excuse. I can do whatever I want, and it's like, no, you still are supposed to. There are still things that go on. There's still consequences to your actions, and if there are consequences,
you're still
it's
a person
fine.
in
I don't
society.
mind if you're going to, if you're going to be a pirate, you understand if you're caught, you will die, and then you're like, and that's acceptable. The thing is. And this is the way
that creates the excitement, though. That creates the fear and the excitement in the player because and it's the challenge to stay alive.
Well, but here's the other part I do also, and I've let players know this. They want to play evil characters. I said there are no, because I don't like killing off characters. I said when you're evil, there are no everything's hands off. There is no capturing. There is none of this other stuff. Whatever you inflict on the enemy is what they will inflict on you. And so if you kill off all your captures, guess what? They're going to do the exact same thing. And it's like, I
would say it depends on if your good guys are lawful or not, though. They might, still apprehend them to put them to trial.
I mean, here's the other side. No, it's literally, that's why, killing prisoners of war is considered a war crime, because your enemies would just retaliate and do the exact same thing to you. It's why for a long time, and I don't know if it's still true now, the people who do this in warfare are subject to the death penalty for this very reason. So,
and his, and I suppose I'm a little bit guilty of that with my character, in that his evil came from his megalomania and his.
Well, that's what makes him bombastic,
But it was his degree of self-importance as well. Yes, a lot of people do confuse evil with a mental health disorder.
But yeah, I mean, then again, you also look at when you start playing evil, you tend not to have any constraints, and when you don't have constraints, you tend to go way off.
All the reservations, yeah. When you think you're a god, when you like look at Joffrey, for instance, look what happened to him. He could do whatever he wanted. What did it do? It turned him into a malignant narcissist, and he could do whatever he wanted. Now he's shooting crossbow bolts into prostitutes.
Ultimately, though,
he always was that dude. That was just he was just.
Oh no! I mean, it just made it even worse. Like it's just because it was a product of neglect. I think because like that kind of behavior usually only manifests when you're neglected.
Or
ultimately, though,
I would say
an evil campaign will end up having, I would say, have more constraints in the end because of the consequences that would build up and build up and build up. So,
especially if you're afraid of them, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, the other part is if you want to look at it as the mountain, you still as Joffrey, he had no limits. There was no one constraining him except his grandfather. That was the only person that constrained him, and his mother encouraged him no matter how bad it was.
By the time she tried to rein him in, it was too late. He just wouldn't listen to her.
But her father was the one that said, that was part of it.
The king is tired. See him to his chambers.
Well, you just see him like, there was.
Yeah, he does. Tywin does not break eye contact, just staring at him like if you were anyone else, you would be so dead right now. You would be so dead.
Anyway, but I haven't seen Game of Thrones, so
you're not missing much anymore because
no. The first 5 seasons are worth watching, and to just pretend that they stopped.
I'm squeamish.
Okay, then. Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, watch Downton Abbey. Downton Abbey actually has some great examples of D&D alignments. Like watch that show, and it's like, well, these characters are written fairly close to how I view the D&D alignments. Like Lord Grantham is clearly lawful good, and Lady Mary, at least at the beginning, is clearly chaotic neutral, and it's actually quite an interesting alignment study, that show, and it's a really good show. But
I think the other part is, and this is one of the things I do is as a DM, look, I don't like it if you're playing an evil character. I find them boring to run. I find the adventures boring for myself. I don't want, that's one of the things I do for the players. I'm like, if you're going to play that way, I don't really, unless we're going to do something where it's intentional. A good example would be, if we're going to talk about Alien and Burke in there, Aliens and Burke in there, you're just like, oh, can I just wash myself after? But you have to be fun about it. I think that the best one was Bester. I think sometimes they're better as an NPC because you can bring them out and you can go for the full game, which is where the fun of the DM is. Is anyone that's watched Babylon 5, go watch Walter Koenig, i.e. Chekhov, play Bester. Just a fantastic villain in there. And
in like superhero games, a lot of the villains are really fun to play, especially when you get a character like Magneto, who is he's got a point.
Yes.
I mean, he's his motivations are ultimately kind of, I mean, he's trying to do good. It's just his means are.
But that's just another great interpretation of evil, yeah.
Yeah, because
I wouldn't say
because he's I mean, given a better response from humanity, he would definitely not be the villain he is.
He's always oscillating on, Charles is right, I should join him. And no, it's not enough. I got to go on my own, right?
Yeah.
But see, here's the problem. It's kind of a problem though. Like he's an understandable character, I would say. Like, because anyone put in that situation it's understandable that, if I had suffered that, I probably might turn out like that too. But it doesn't mean he's like, in a way, he's
the comic character.
I've limited exposure to the comics. I've read a few of them, and I've seen a lot of the cartoons and the movies, but not the comics. But from what I have seen, he still comes across as kind of a racial supremacist. Like he really I don't think it's
he's
good.
He's become the thing that he hated.
That's the thing. That makes him. Yeah.
And I mean, to a certain degree, and I mean, that's why he's kind of a good complex villain, because from a certain point of view, he's kind of right. Mutants are superior. You know? I mean, they literally can do things that humans will never be able to do.
And it's also great because he's becoming what made him, the Nazi that made him, right?
But as far as you know, the whole thing you were saying, DK, about like anybody who went through them, I've known Holocaust survivors, and they're very nice people.
Oh no! You don't understand. What I mean is no. What I mean is, we could envision that it is possible that this could have broken me in the same way, and I could have turned out. Like, that's where the empathy comes from. Like,
I know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying everyone would. Like, most wouldn't, but some would, and that's where we're like, we have some sympathy for him because it wasn't fair what happened to him, but at the same time, that doesn't mean he's a good person.
Too, though, and Magneto, is Magneto as good of a villain without an immediate and apparent contrast like Professor X? Because we're constantly reminded they're very much two sides of the same coin.
Straw Piglet, I think we come to the conclusion that it is subjective.
Well, I mean, I defined it pretty well, Straw. If you don't like my decision, that's up to me. But
it's important, Straw, that every table has to define it. I think like none of us will come to an agreement on
consensus
what objectively evil is, but yeah, every table when you're running a game, a DM should define this is what evil is in my game world. I think absolutely you should do this, so that players have that parameter to work with. And I wanted to, sorry, Omen, you're talking about what you would do in an evil game, what you would allow, and I think that's sort of another important thing is when you're playing evil is what are you wanting out of the game. Not just evil, but like in the game, what do you want out of it? My evil characters in my games tend to work because for us, when we sit at the table, our goal isn't to achieve high fantasy, isn't heroics. It's to see what happens. So everybody is curious. Oh, well, if I play the character and I interact in a certain way, what will happen? What will be the result? So that leads to a different style of game as opposed to somebody else who's like, hey, we want to be superheroes, the Fifth Ed style. We don't care if it's a high fantasy. We just want to have fun. So let's all just agree we're not going to be evil. We're going to work together because we want to be heroes. So somebody dropping an evil character into a game like that isn't going to work because it goes against what the table wants.
I'm going to mention another thing too, which is I like the moral hard decisions, which is the classic Spider-Man, do you save the bus or do you save your girlfriend? Know, it's I kind of like those kind of things. Whereas if you're just purely, how do I want to say it? The trolley problem. If you're just like, person's life is fine, and you don't actually ask yourself, which I always thought was a stupid question, which is how old? Because a lot of it depends. Is that an old inspired person, or is that a mother with pushing a little baby? There's a lot of different things, and like how can they evade it? And at that point, it's like, well, the person who's most knowledgeable is one thing, but that's a decision that I have to sometimes deal with in my own real life whenever I'm trying to make decisions. But those are things I find that's interesting with characters. Is I also like mention the Vampire the Masquerade I saw mentioned, which is your character has the evil tendencies, and your job is to fight against it as you begin to lose your humanity. And that makes for an interesting character. The problem is that if the players just completely embrace it, it's fun for a power game fantasy. It's fun for kind of a one-shot for the most part. Yeah. It's fun if you really want to just go all out. But in many ways, it removes those, how do I want to say, those hard moral decisions, those really meaningful moments that's in there. Which is what I want to do if I want to play a more serious game.
You can't tempt an evil person to be good, but you can tempt a good person to be evil. That's kind of where it's more interesting.
Well, and even I know you're talking about the Curse of Strahd. Well, that's what made Strahd interesting. Was he had kind of that dichotomy, for he's you if very powerful and having been pushed to the absolute limit and gave in. Well, I'm not even saying so much. It's not just that. He's the classic Dracula. There is a certain part. Yep. I play by certain rules. He's not your chaotic evil hey, I'm going to do whatever I feel like. It's kind of like, I'm doing this. I do have sympathy. I have human emotions. And I think that's also the problem with a lot of the evil characters just put aside all that aspect. They don't look at it as,
It's the lazy way to portray it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I have with a lot of games. Is players are
Strahd
lazy.
will let you. Strahd would let you into his castle and have dinner with him, but if you go to certain places in the castle, he'll kill you. You know, don't go into the crypts. Don't go to where Tatiana is like her shrine. Don't go there. And if you have the sword that can kill me, I'm not going to let you in. But if you're cordial, you're respectful, I'll let you in and out.
Yes, you may come to dinner. It would be most pleasant. We'll have a conversation because I like conversations, especially when the conversation is about me.
And hey, if you want to say serve me as a vampire, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Well,
No.
we're talking about this, but what happens when, let's say, you're doing this much, which is the fun part, I think, sometimes, which is, hey, the vampire is evil, but he's sending us on something to better the livelihoods of his subjects. So where do you fall in that aspect? You know, those are where sometimes the questions come into it.
You mean the Doctor Doom issue? Everybody in Doctor Doom's kingdom loves him.
Yeah, because he's a good ruler. He looks out for his people.
Yep, he's a great ruler.
Noblesse
He just
oblige.
he just happens to be incredibly evil.
Yeah, it's like if you
Lawful
portray
evil again.
Strahd, yeah, if you portray Strahd as look once a month, I just want some blood, some tribute. I won't kill you, but if you disobey me, I'll kill you all, and I'll protect you from the monsters. Yeah.
I'm thoroughly convinced Ed Greenwood based Manchun on Doctor Doom. If you're familiar with Forgotten Realms at all.
It's been
Manchun is one of the big evil personalities of the realms, but he operates through a bunch of clones, so nobody ever actually kills the actual Manchun.
The actual one. Yeah.
And that's,
so Dr. Doom was always like, oh, we killed Dr. Doom. Wait, it's a robot.
It's a Doobot.
I hate that. I hate that so much. It's such a you didn't actually kill him. Then why do that? Why make them so absurdly powerful that they can never die? That just removes tension for me.
Because it's fun. Clearly, it's been working for 50 years in the comic books.
So
it wouldn't work. I'm not. Yeah,
Doctor Doom was 2099. Okay, so that tells you how far back that was. But and I liked him from that.
Wait, 1929?
No,
2099 was so they did a whole spin-off of Marvel in the year 2099.
Yeah, Spider-Man.
Oh, right, yeah.
But it was just Doctor Doom was another one that came up as talking about evil characters and mainly Manchun and all that stuff and just that whole like lawful evil character. But I think Mages mentioned it earlier, and I think we were talking about how to run an evil campaign, and it was mentioned at your table too. I mean, you kind of have to also decide early on: are you using that sort of cosmological evil? Or are we going with more of a very much a realistic, humanistic morality? Because with the cosmological evil, then pure evil does exist. Evil is actually a force. It's an entity. It's
I think this is a fairly good description, personally.
Again, like I said, it's neutral to me. They are still self-serving. It's just
those filthy neutrals.
But yeah, that's
what compels a man to neutrality? Is it gold, power, or just an inborn ability to be neutral?
Anyway, one thing I want to come on to next is the having just an evil character in an otherwise good-ish party. People say this can't be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say it's perfectly possible.
I would say it can be done if you have emotionally and intellectually mature players on both sides of the alignment. Both the good and the bad are emotionally and mentally mature enough to accept it.
Well, this is how we did it. My necromancer, the rest of the party were good and the good side of neutral. They were doing heroic things, saving people, blah 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 blah.
Luke, Hannah, and Leia, basically.
But my character was also doing these things, But the reason why he was doing it is he wanted to gain enough power and enough sway so that he could eventually raise an army to tear down the temple of the good guys who had put his master to death for practicing the necromantic arts.
Wow. Gee, I wonder why they did this.
I wonder why they did it. I wonder why. And that was so his motives, his long game motives were very much evil. But as we were actually playing, when we were going through the motions of adventuring, when we were killing monsters, doing quests and whatever, he was very much a member of the party. But the reason for him doing it, the reasons for that he was doing it were different to the reasons why other people were doing it. And in most sessions, the only hints at his evil nature would come in sort of role-playing asides, little comments that were made, often clearly not going to have a mechanical impact on the game. For example, we rescued a ship full of innocent slaves. And they were discussing the best thing to do with the cargo, to describe them. They're like, where do we take them? Do we take them home? Do we just release them to the nearest lawfully aligned town to hopefully let people deal with let the authorities deal with it and get them all back to their homes or whatever? And I was there going, no. You say their lives have value. They certainly do. They have monetary value. They were like, what are you saying? I'm like, no, I didn't really mean that, did I? I didn't mean that. But maybe if you just leave me those 4 or 5 over there, I'll look after those. I know some people who could really look after them. And obviously,
they just give you the side eye and just like, really?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, basically, yeah. And I knew that I was never going to get to do that. But it was just that playing the evil side of it. And there was another bit where one of the characters had a war pig as a pet. Every time we went to a town, it became a bit of a trope that I would try and find how much the war pig was worth in terms of meat at the local butchers. Because it's just often silly little things like that, just to remind people that. And these would be happening behind the scenes. They wouldn't always. I mean, yes, the players would see me role play it with the DM. I knew I'd never do it successfully with the DM. The DM because it was his wife's war pig, so it was never going to be allowed in the game session. But I'd be there going. I would just sneak off to go and see the local butcher to see what the war pig would be worth. And then go about 5 minutes of here, piggy, here, piggy, but then we just. It was never going to work. But
I think you make a good point right there, though. If you're going to do an evil campaign or a mixed alignment campaign, do it on the up and up. Get rid of the secret squirrel crap and play it upright and obvious. Not straight. You can be silly about it, but just like, I mean, because if you are doing the behind, the sneaky note passing secret squirrel crap. That is then going to foster a player versus player attitude as opposed to character versus character.
Yes.
Because they'll be sitting there thinking, why is John so quiet all the time? He's not saying anything. What's he doing?
Flat out ban secret squirrel stuff for my games.
Yeah, I've actually been in games where like the DM would tell secrets and would go into a separate chat with other players for like 20 to 30 minutes at a time. And we're just sitting there just thinking.
That's ridiculous.
Putting the game up. Yeah, it was sometimes I think it was up to like 40 or 50 minutes. And we're just
that is between session sort of behavior.
Yeah, and it's in the middle of the game and it's a secret that only your character would know. And it's like, and I'm sitting here like, can we not just be adults and just say it publicly and just like role play as if we don't know? Like, can we not do that? I didn't like it when I had to do it because he did it with me as well. I'm like, it got to the point where I was like, can we not just be adults about this? please.
I want to say in my games, in my AD&D game, assassin is a fairly popular class. It comes up a lot, and
I mean, it's good. It's a good class.
It is, but what I don't tell players is, oh, such and such made an assassin. The person will bring in their assassin, and they act or behave in the way they want. The one thing I always do is first level assassins are never sent out on assassin work. They are strictly spies. They're information gatherers. They're told by, if they choose to be with a guild, I always give the player, do you want to be aligned with guild or are you independent, right? And
a freelancer,
freelance, they go from there. But if they're with a guild, then their job always is get all the information they can on these adventurers and report back. Profit how you can, but ingratiate yourself, and go from there. And it always works. It's pretty funny. I don't, pass notes at the table or whatever. And the players are like, oh, I'll just go along with it because I'm supposed to work with these guys and profit. So, hey, and that kind of approach works very well. And the same now that's an assassin specifically with an organization behind them, but the same works for any bog standard evil character. It's like, I joined this group. We're here to make money. So as long as I get my share, then Bob's your uncle. I don't care. Like there will inevitably be moral conflicts, but that's part of the game. And so long as characters understand that, sometimes conflicts can boil over. One character might have to bow out and you have to bring in somebody else. That is part of the game, and you have to accept that if you're going to choose to be an evil character, mixing in with good aligned characters. But I don't ban it. I don't say, oh well, I'll say, oh, you want to make an assassin? Well, you should know there's a paladin.
No, I would just I would just treat it. This is kind of why I like Swords of Wizardry. It just says assassins. Like, I just say assassins can be neutral and paladins can be ordered to work with assassins. I would just say that. I would have a guild of assassins that are evil and just treat them as evil NPCs. There would be a neutrally aligned guild of assassins that conspires against them, and work for the crown, or
I'm going to put it this way. This is the problem that I have with a lot of players going into it, is there are areas that I don't want to deal with when I play games, whether it be rape or child mutilation or torture. I'm like, look, that we can talk about that upstream. It's murder. Well, murder doesn't bother me as much, oddly enough, because you're kind of murder.
The entire game is murder.
Yeah, it's
no. See, that's no. I would say you're killing them because killing can be justified. Murder cannot.
But again, murder is
no.
Okay, look.
People justify murder all the time.
We have wars going on and they're justifying it. Anyway, the whole point of it is that while we're doing this that's part of the other reason I don't like a lot of evil characters. Now, I don't mind if you're going to be kind of twirling your mustache or things like that, but I'm like, look, I kind of don't want to go into those really dark areas and watch my players go down onto that. And like, no,
that's fade to black territory. Even when I played World of Darkness stuff, I'm like, there's just some stuff I'm not doing.
Yeah,
I get that it's part of the world, and this is supposed to be a dark and gritty thing. I'm like, that's cool. I don't go see those kind of movies either. If I, my viewing tolerance is much greater than my doing tolerance, obviously, but it's still though, like torture, mutilation, all of that stuff. Like, we can just fade to black or
that.
Do it off screen.
I mean,
or even in playing games, even with D&D with non-evil evil parties. So you're talking about like you come to the village and you can make it clear how bad it's been for the villagers without having to spell every last thing out.
Detail out.
Hey, and the other part is, and I know that John's probably going to go, yeah, look, that's left to the DM, and he needs to read the players for that. But the problem that I have with it all too often is, unless you get very, very mature players, and that it's one of those things of, if you're going to do it, it's one thing if you're going to twirl your mustache, and you're going to be that kind of evil, like we're talking Magneto, something like that. But when you're going to be truly depraved, like, no offense, I don't want you in my game.
Yeah, like, if like a player, even if it's like the fade to black stuff, like you say, oh yeah, but I'm just like, yeah, if you're doing like, murder or rape or like excessive torture, right, like that kind of shit, I'm like, I want to root for my players. And if your character are doing this because you're controlling them, I don't want to root for them. It'll get to the point where I'm like, I want them dead. I will actively cheer if they die. I'm like, good. Now I don't have to deal with you anymore.
Now I will say this much: is I don't mind a player that's going to do it with the understanding that they're going to die. And
oh yeah,
what I mean, it's kind of the look. You're going to be my little secret DM character that you get to play, but just understand that you're going to do this. And then the other part is, are you going to have a character arc? It's one thing if you start off evil and you're going to try to have a character arc and try and redeem yourself, but or you're trying to be good and you're slowly going down, which is the Vampire the Masquerade style. That said, as much as I talk about not wanting evil, I do really enjoy this game called Wicked Ones, where you get to play the evil monsters.
Yeah, but you're playing more of the dungeon monsters, not so much
exactly.
I mean,
psychopaths.
They're evil in the context of the flip side of the dungeon crawl.
Well,
yeah,
it's Dungeon Keeper role playing game.
Yeah, well, that's my whole point. This is kind of like fun, tongue in cheek, and that's the thing of like, okay, you know that the hero is going to kill you eventually. We're going to see how long you make it. You get to have some fun with it, and every so often you might be poking your goblin or kicking them, because they aren't washing the floors correctly. If you're going to do it kind of the comedic way, then I don't
evil.
mind.
Yeah.
I would be interested to see.
Comedic evil is fine. Yeah.
I'd be interested to know whether this would cross the line then, as far as you're concerned. This is going back to my necromancer again.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how we got the cargo of slaves that we ended up freeing. We boarded a pirate ship. The pirate was they had a drow pirate captain who was clearly evil himself, and we beat him, took control of the ship, but we captured him alive. And we took control of the ship, and we all chose our quarters on the ship for the remaining bit of the journey. And I was like, I will look after the prisoner. Okay. Yeah, well, make sure you look after him. We need to make sure he is brought to justice. Yes, I will look after him. Of course, I'll look after him. The next morning, I have a new skeletal helper that I have raised during the night, and I have a very fresh looking and very black tattoo. And
what did you do with the body, John? What did you do with the body, John?
Does that matter? But the tattoo was actually his skin, and the skeleton was him. That I basically murdered him in the night and brought him back as a skeletal helper.
Skittles whetstoning his sword.
Okay. Yeah. But I didn't actually go into any details. All I did is I described what they saw in the morning.
If I were playing in that game with you, I'd be like, I may not act on you now, but if you ever need me, I'm leaving you to your death.
I helped the party. I'd help them. I'd help them defeat him in the first place.
I actually wouldn't mind that, because a lot of stuff, if it's off screen, that's fine.
It was off screen, yes.
Yeah, but I would just say my character's just like, I don't care how helpful you are. You've just killed an innocent slave, and I'm like, nah. I may not kill you, but it's like that joke with Batman, like, I'm not going to kill you, but I sure as shit ain't going to save you.
Oh, I did agree that they could release all the slaves, but I kept the ship. The ship became mine. I named the ship.
Well, and I'm going to bring this out. The other point too which is it's not that the players can't do evil actions. This is where I kind of like the more neutral with evil tendencies than just being the pure evil. Which is okay, just like you're saying, whenever you have the evil character, can they be in there? It's like, hold on, where the other player is going to hold you back from doing your worst base instincts. You're like, all right, we rein you in. You're useful, but you also, like, you suddenly start sharpening your blades. Like, no, you can't torture him. He's like, he puts the blades back. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay, that's. There are certain things in there, and it's like, well, I'll get him to talk, and things are just off screen. Okay, we roll a DC, come back, and like, you don't want to know. Well, what happened?
A good example would be TV and movies. There's plenty of TV and movies where we see put the gloves on and tighten their fists, or spark the little grippy things, then pull out from behind the door, and you hear the and that's it. Cut to the next scene. I mean, Empire Strikes Back. You see Han getting lowered into the zappers, and then from the other window. You don't need to actually see the whole scene because
we know what's happening.
Absolute wreck.
Well, and actually,
he can't stand. He's almost blind, and he can't stand.
Well, the other part is that, and I'm going to mention if anyone's ever seen the movie Black Cat, which has black and white with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi. They do have something like that at the end, and where he goes over, and all you do is you see the shadow, and you see the scalpel, and you see him doing this. You see this in the shadow, the shadow against the wall, but you don't actually see him doing it to the person. Your mind is going to fill in the gaps. You don't have to describe it, and I think that's part of the problem. Is a lot of people do it as a fantasy depravity thing. It's just like. We're talking about evil, but the same thing applies for sex.
There's a difference.
Fantasy, there's the depravity fantasy as well, and a lot of people use RPGs.
I think there's a difference though in the game. If you're torturing, say, a monster in game to try and find someone like someone who was captured against their will, like you're trying to save someone, and you have like days or hours to save them. That's different than let's torture them for fun or torture them to find the treasure.
Well,
it's very different.
It's not the fact that they're torturing that's the problem, DK. It's do you want to play it out step by step?
Yeah, that's true. Oh God, no.
And then I'm going to lift his loincloth and expose his manhood.
Stop.
My point is that where you're going, or are you going to? I'm going to torture the orc.
Right. Then I'll roll a d6 to say, okay, see how long he lasts before he talks. Even in that
lightweight example there with just a few words, it's uncomfortable and it's weird and there are people who
it's
really
icky.
Get into it and get off on it, and that's the problem.
Yeah, here's another thing my character did. We were being pursued by masses of humanoids. The DM had described it as an uncountable amount. We would be overwhelmed. We ran through a door, slammed the door behind us. I pulled out my scroll, which had got Cloud Kill on it. Open the door, cast the Cloud Kill into the area, the other side of the door, close the door. And everyone was like, well, we're going to get away. And I was like, no, hold on. I pressed my ear against the door, went, listen to the screams. Are they not glorious? And then,
I would just say,
we left.
Like the elf, if I were an elf, I would be like, thief, you don't want to make that listen check. You just don't.
Me, I would listen. I was like, glorious.
But to be fair, those are kind of what those are the things that I'm okay with for the players. There's a lot of stuff that happens off screen, and let the players fill it in, because sometimes that's much worse than you describing it.
Yeah.
The players can fill it. That's the whole thing of whenever you talk about theater of the mind. That's the whole point of playing that, is letting your mind really go like,
It's kind of like being a good creative writer or director. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's actually kind of simple and easy to just be overt about it. But if you drop into the game that, somebody's been tortured, and flipping it around to the good side, for example, and you come into the room and you see the guy's not there, but you can see that there's blood on the walls, and you can see the implements that are out on the,
the core rule is show don't tell, but then evoke don't show.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
And
they see the skeletal remains with dried blood on it, and
there's a reason why the big old monologuing villains don't go in, okay, and so subsection to my evil rant, I'm going to do this, and then this, and then please refer to section 5.3.7 of my evil rant about.
Well, I was reading some of the old books. I don't remember what they are, but there's some of them, whether it's the from the 1930s, I guess, from more, and you start reading some of it, you knew what happened, but they use kind of euphemisms and things like that. And you're like, oh, okay. It's all right. She's been raped, but, you didn't. You know what occurred.
Explain it. Yeah,
you don't have to go in
explain.
detail. That's
Well, also there
it's
it's easy in fantasy games, especially to use some of the parlance of the time that make it lighter weight. Like, she was taken, and or they took her away, and and then just everybody's just like, okay, well, we kind of figure we know what the hairy bandits from the hill are probably going to do with the farmer's daughter when they take her away.
And I'm going to mention one other thing, though, which John did, which was there were times that when I was watching Game of Thrones, I just felt it was gratuitous that the whoever were the prop makers, like, we can go overboard. And I went, you know what? You don't need to. We already know what's going to occur. You just have to do a little bit. It doesn't have to be where everyone's entrails are going all over the place. I've seen animals killed. That doesn't happen in like real life, like they're showing it sometimes. Yeah. So,
if the violence in it had been shown, for example, like in Shawshank Redemption when he's getting beaten up in the prison, it's a violent scene. Yeah. There's some violence there, but I can watch that because it's not gratuitous.
Yes.
And if it had been that sort of level, I'd have watched it straight away. Yeah, fine.
I mean, I watched I think it was Outlaw Jesse, the Clint Eastwood film, and when it literally within the first few minutes when he met the prostitute, Josie Wales, and she's like antagonizing him, and then he does the deed with her, and I just at that point I'm like, you know what, this is wrong. I just no. I'm not.
The other part I want to bring up is are you making everyone else uncomfortable? And it's one thing if you're all going in there, but this is what most of us, whenever we play fantasy games, we kind of want to play the pulpy high fantasy or somewhat gritty, but it's kind of the imagined
and thing. That's always that Jack in the Box of a mixed alignment game where like one person really wants to play the evil characters because you really don't know what's going to pop out of that box. And so many of those people who come to the table, because like I said, I haven't played a lot of evil characters, but I've had them in my games, and I've been in parties with them. So many of them, I would say the majority of them, were just either obnoxious dicks, or they were just there, like you said, to play out their weird fantasies and fetishes, and just and they're making everybody uncomfortable. It's one of my playing World of Darkness games and be like,
no,
I know.
If it's like that scene from Seven where it's like, what's in the box?
What?
It's like, what's in the box?
Flesh-shaping vampires were some of the worst.
Well, no. Well, see, this is the thing that we're talking about. I don't mind if the DM is doing that because I know I'm going to be kind of uncomfortable, and I know that's the kind of game I'm going to be for.
Especially when we play something like Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah,
because I see that as part of my job. It's part of my job as running a Call of Cthulhu game to bring in elements that the players are going to think, oh no. I'm going to be
the other part though is in that same element, the players are allowed to defeat and kill it.
Yes.
So there's that element of you're fighting against something for a good, whether you consider that or not. Whereas
there are different types of icky too, because I mean, I would say like medical horror and body horror are not necessarily on the same level as like
psychological horror.
Well, no, psychological horror. I mean, I'm talking about like it's a weird set of lines. Like you said, you don't have a problem with murder. You have a problem with murder, but then I argued that the entire game is predicated on murder, and then we argued over what was murder.
That's
the same thing with levels of depravity and weird. Some people might think that weird squelchy noises and orifices and tentacles is just over the top, and no, but. And then some people are weird. Like in my game, my Call of Cthulhu game, I have somebody who cannot watch any of those horror movies with all of that. They can read it and they can listen to me describe it, and that's not a problem.
That's me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you got to know your audience, and the thing is, not everybody's mind is the same. And this is, I'm gonna mention something that is gonna get people really screaming, and that's where that old idea with a new title of safety tools comes in. I know people hate that term. The reason those exist is because you don't know who you have at the table. I do, because I play with the same people over and over and over and over and over again. I don't need those tools.
Well, and I think the problem with
but if you're sitting down with a stranger or playing online,
I'm going to say one thing is when people talk about safety tools, I was like, well, they're going to interfere with my game. no offense, if they play it and everyone else is okay, then it's like, look, you're probably the wrong player for my game. And the other aspect is if you're the one controlling it by using a safety tool, by being a dick, we're just going to kick you out of the game. So it kind of self-regulates, which people forget about. That's why
those tools have been there all along. We just called them different things, and again, we're kind of going off topic, but they're important, I guess, if you're going to play an evil game in a lot of cases, because the first safety tool is we're going to play an evil game. What are your limits? Because if you don't want this, then you don't need to be in this game. It's not the right environment for you. Just like you don't go see the movie with the trailer you don't like, or you don't read the book that has the crappy description on the back of it, or you don't.
Well, I'm going to say this much: whenever you play this one for the
body horror to high heaven.
Well, no, it's not just body horror, but there's also usually one traitor somewhere in there, which you may or may not be. Which that's again, it's okay, but I like how they do it, which is
Hawkman points out that what your limits are is a convo that belongs in session 0.
Yeah,
I think that's very true.
For example, if I'm going to run a horror game, I mean, I will always have firstly, I make sure I'm playing with adults. But it's a case of we are playing Call of Cthulhu. There are going to be some nasty things in here. If you want to play, you're more than welcome to, but just be aware there are things in this that aren't going to be nice.
Yeah,
I'm not going to tell you what, because it'll spoil the horror.
And to be fair on this is if I come in there and I go, that's the first thing, whether it's cult, I look at the art, I look at all this other stuff. I know we've talked about this before, but if I look at the art, I look at the general tone of it, and a game like Cult, I just go, no, not for me.
Sometimes it's just like the names of the chapters and some of the words that jump out. It's like, all right, when I read Cult, for example, and I'm talking about the original Cult because I haven't read any of the new stuff, but that game was just like, first of all, it was just like edgier than thou. It's like, it's like, all right, I don't think I need, I don't have that strong a need to be cool to play this game. World of Darkness was dark enough, but Cult was that game that like, World of Darkness was watered down.
Well. So this was the Black Dog or whatever they did with the really really dark stuff.
Yeah,
that was. But again, it's one of those things of when we're talking about evil, it just depends on the group and what you're trying to look for and what type of experience. And I can say for myself is I kind of want a more heroic. You can play somewhat of an evil character, or if you're going to be playing. I don't want to put this Blackbeard, that kind of chaotic evil. Okay, fine. You're kind of playing it up. We're going to be playing swashbuckling pirates. But you're going to go out there. You're going to pick the tropes. You're going to burn the with all the people on board. You're going to burn that. Okay, fine. You're going to be evil. And the same token is it's probably going to be a short campaign because everyone's going to come after you, and you're just going to make enemy after enemy until finally someone lops off your head.
I will point out to L that players always had the right to say no. They just couldn't say no and stay in the game. If it was something they found objectionable, they have the right to leave, and that's them saying no.
As far as I'm concerned, they still have the right to leave.
But he basically what he was talking about was the whole in response to Mobius saying this is a conversation had before friends, and he would say. That was at a time when the DM had the right to say no. Not now, the players can say no. I'm arguing players have always had that right.
If I can speak directly to L for a moment, and I'll try to maybe be this. Your perception of what gaming is not what it is, because there are plenty of people who don't play the way that you like to make it out that people do play. There are plenty of people who still have those conversations, and there were plenty of people who in the past who didn't have those conversations, which caused problems. Most of the issues that people see with gamers today were issues with gamers back then. We just know about it more because we have social media, and the gaming hobby has not changed as much as people think it is. Also, a lot of that awareness has been gained over decades of gaming.
And I think the key is I think the key is that the people who it's certainly the younger side of the hobby who play very differently to us, who will be the loudest ones on social media.
Okay,
So
let's be fair.
You'll hear a lot more voices on social media from people who won't play like us, and it gives the impression that everything has changed.
will
Yeah, it's
say,
a loud minority.
I will say, yeah, that's exactly it. I was about to say, only safety tools are just that. They're tools, and they can be useful in the right hands. It's only when
I feel like I derailed the stream.
when malignant. No, it was my own fault. This on me, but this will be my last comment on it. They become a problem when they're used by malignant narcissists to derail the game for their own ends, and they are a tiny minority within the actual hobby in and of itself compared to the rest of us.
And what you'll find out is those people can't find anyone in the game, and they're like, I need to find a dungeon master. It's like, because no one wants to play with you because you're a dickhead.
Yeah, you're exactly. a dickhead.
I mean, and I know that Elf and a lot of us, I don't know about you, DK, but a lot of us when we were growing up, it was hard to get 4 or 5 players. So you kind of dealt with that icky player, whether you wanted to or not, just so you could have enough.
I just played with my friends from college, so I was on fairly good terms with them before they kicked me out because they just didn't like the way I played games because I was too old school.
No.
So, you know.
But I'm saying, but
you didn't grow up in the 80s.
Yeah,
I know.
But as a kid, usually, there were only like 4 or 5 people around us that would play at all, and so you kind of dealt with some of the ones that are the worst. Nowadays, is you have, whether we like it or not, if I was willing to play on certain days, I could probably find 15 people to play with, and online and stuff like that. And I don't mean just in our group. I mean, I'm talking about locally within about 10 or 15 miles. The hard part is trying to find a time, a location, things like that. But it's not that we don't want to play, but it was very different when I was a kid. As a kid, you dealt with those. As you're getting older, guess what? If you're going to abuse or you're going to be that icky person, you're going to get a talking to. Especially, I'm old enough now. If I can tell my son, why can't I tell my player? I think that's why the other problem is a lot of people are kind of afraid of confrontation. Like, no, you're not going to do that. If I can tell that to my boy, I'm going to tell that to my friend.
Look at Saturday. I had 7 players at the end of that game. We started off with 5, but the whole point of that having that sort of drop in game, drop in, drop out, very sort of relaxed, is that people can drop in and drop out. And I know Sean would have played if he'd felt well.
And I wish he could.
And one of my local friends here would have played if he hadn't been summoned to go into work. So I believe he had to go to work.
In my game,
we could have had 9 people, which would have been more than I couldn't have got that locally.
Yeah, to go back to what you were saying, Omanel, I have this simple strike policy of if it will use alignment as a weapon. If you do things that are unlawful or unneutral, you're going to lose a level. If you keep going down this path, you're going to become chaotic and you'll become an NPC under my control. And if your next carry behaves like this, I'm going to kick you from the group. That's my 3 strikes policy. First is a level, second is a character, third is you, and then you're gone.
And as a DM, and I've done this before, and it's a little bit different. I've had where the guy was doing a perfectly good job role playing, but he did not fit with the group. And I sat back and I said, you know what? You're going to have to play another character because you're not fitting in with the group. He's like, oh, okay. So he created a new character. We went along. It's not, but that's a mature thing. These are, I think a lot of times when we're looking at stuff and everyone looks at Twitter as if it's real life, it's like 1 or 2% of this really loud vocal minority that's young that hasn't dealt with it. And a lot of them,
and most of them are bots anyway. So
well, I don't think a lot of
no, that's not. I'm just saying it's time. It's actually been proven that most of them are bots. So.
Anyway, I want to come to another point that's been, it's on my list of stuff to talk about here, but Crafting Gamer.
Yeah, we have another hour.
Yes, it's another starred comment.
Sweet.
And if I show this one up on screen now, come on.
What's the risk? But have you guys talked about games where the area of alignment is gray? Kind of like during the age of piracy here on Earth.
Right, well, what I want to say here is we go all the way back to early D&D, AD&D, and that the idea of what the groups were in those days. and they were most adventuring parties, no matter what they claimed, were glorified grave robbers going into crypts, nicking other people's stuff. And I would argue that it was very morally grey right from the beginning. Old school D&D, by its very essence of getting treasure to become more powerful, leans towards that moral greyness,
Self-interest, yeah.
That self-interest. Yes.
But
I don't think. See, I think alignment is very specifically laid out. Alignment is never gray. And like if you're playing a gray area, that's where you're playing the neutral.
I'm going to bring this up is if we're going to be talking about alignment, you've got, because most of the time we're talking about D&D. Palladium does this pretty well. It has one of the better alignment systems that's not related to a cosmological battle. I mean, just that's what you look at is you go, okay, and that sometimes works better in those kinds of games. And then you get other types of games where you get Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, where chaos is evil because it has an actual impact on the world. And I think that's sometimes the problem is we're talking about, everyone wants to talk about just the players, but a lot of these games, whether it's Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay or the old D&D, it's a cosmological battle.
Look at Dark Sun.
Yeah. Well, Dark Sun, yeah.
It's a rough world, and you've got to do what you can to survive in that place.
But you can still have the standard alignment. It's just that the majority of the alignments will probably fall into the neutrals and evils. You have very few good people in that kind of world. To what Omanal was saying about the Palladium alignments. Now, I prefer the D&D 9-point system, but what makes Palladium playable practically is because every Palladium alignment lays out the tenets of what those people believe, and it's very clear. Okay, I can do this and this, and I won't do this and this and this, and that, I think, it speaks to what I was saying earlier about defining it for players.
I do not like alignment as a personal morality. I've always hated it because it's very haphazard.
Palladium is not haphazard when you look at it.
No, it's very specific.
It tells you, in fact, it gives you good examples like we've been doing here as well.
No, I don't mean a Palladium. I don't mean that. I mean just the way people handle like 9-prong. They treat it. I think that's the main reason why I don't like 9-prong alignment. Okay. Because I've been surrounded by the more new school interpretation of it being purely moral rather than.
That's in the implementation, not in the core
system.
I
know. I'm very stubborn though. I think that's
yes.
The reason I love having the alignments is
I am issues after all.
You are issues. Excuse me. The reason alignment is great as a role playing tool, and this gets lost on a lot of people who just want to play themselves. It's a way to get out of your head. It's a way to remind yourself, oh wait, I'm playing a character. The character, even though I would say do this character would not do that. That is crossing a moral line for him, and so many players toss alignment simply because it's an inconvenience to them, thus making the players evil. That is my thesis.
Yeah, like literally, like I've seen videos where like it was like Joke Hat or whatever, where like a character was like he asked, like he was doing like an example of new school play, and he was talking to a character who was like, oh, I'm gonna scam some people, and Joke Hat was like, wait, you said you were lawful good, and he says, no, I was actually a hospice nurse turned guard. But I don't really believe in alignment anyway, so I'm going to get my scam on. So you're chaotic evil. So you're neutral or chaotic evil. Cool. Nice.
I'm going to say something which is actually pretty funny, but it relates to this. If anyone has seen the AI where the 3 presidents play D&D with Ben Shapiro, it's pretty funny listening to some of that.
No, I haven't seen it.
It's a comedy thing that they come over there. They make fun of all the presidents going in there. But that's one of the things, like, you can't do that. You're lawful good. That's exactly what you're talking about.
When they're doing the D&D, the AI stuff. Yeah, I have seen some of these. Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Okay. I'm saying they're pretty funny, but it has to do with some of what we're talking about. But I agree with Sean there is alignment tells you on how your character is going to act. It gives you a guide. I mean, that's one of the reasons I like the Palladium alignment. Otherwise, it's just kind of, what does this, like, the problem I have now with D&D 5e in particular, and I haven't really looked at 3, but it doesn't give really good guidelines on what's going in there. It's not. It's like, oh well, you can do this.
No, it's an
It doesn't-
afterthought. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't even.
Yeah.
It doesn't impact your character. It doesn't really do anything. I mean, if you look at the old D&D, protection from evil has a very specific ability.
Good to hear,
Evil means
Hungar.
something.
Very good to hear.
Yeah. Oh, very good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Great to hear,
but-
Hungar.
But if you want to play a game without alignments, then fine. You know, you got
Yeah,
this
yeah.
one where you can play evil, or you can play selfish, or you can play altruistic. But
Or you can
You
play.
know-
Or here's the thing: you can be playing like in my Lords of
Yes.
Olympus game that I play in. I played a character who's the god of humanity, and I literally got to the point where he's honorable and forthright, but someone was twisting his arm, and he broke into a prison to get something because he knew the guy would basically say, "I'll give you this for a favor," and he just wanted to say, "No, fuck that! I'm taking this. The world needs it more. I need this now." And when he got to a point, he twisted his arm and said, "Give me a favor." And he just said, I'll blow up this entire city if it means killing you because I'll survive. He's like, go ahead and do it. But that's not something an honorable god would do. And I was like, I as a player wanted to fucking kill this guy. I wanted him dead so goddamn badly. But I relented because that's not what my character would have done.
But in 1E, like it says, just that loss of level really forces characters. One is to decide on how they're going to play.
Oh,
And number two is it doesn't mean as much when you're at low level. It's fairly easy to get, to come back. But if you're 11th or 12th level, it's a long time to get.
to get back to get XP. Yeah.
So
I've had players who say, I'd just rather start with a first level character than lose a level. It's like, you'd rather start all the way at the beginning than just have to get that one back at 10th level.
Why? But I will also point out to. Oh, sorry, keep going.
Well, but I mean, when we're talking about this, it's some of those things, which is it's a fundamental shift in the way the character looks at things. And to be fair, you should be warning the player, hey, you're going towards this. You're slowly moving over to this direction, and maybe it makes sense. But man, it really does. Especially if you're an evil character, because we're talking about evil, but sometimes there's this redemption arc that we want for players, and the redemption aspect is good if you're starting off at evil. And I know that Shadow and Sun said he had a group where they were evil, and after several years, they said, "We're going to start being good." And you're like, "Oh, okay, that's just." But that player is making real sacrifice. Well, I say player, but the character's making real sacrifice by losing levels to switch his alignment. And the same,
because he'd have to if he wants to go from like chaotic evil to lawful good, he'd have to go up 3 prongs to lawful, or 2 prongs to lawful, or 3 prongs to good, and then up again. That's like 4 levels gone.
Well,
That's
it depends
insane.
on how you. Well,
Yeah.
but it could be that, or I might allow 2. Okay, you went from chaotic evil to neutral, from neutral to lawful good, because you can, I do think you can go diagonally. But
can you?
But,
I thought you had to go like.
You had to go one
horizontally or
axis at a
vertically.
time. Yeah.
well,
It
you're
depends
supposed
whether
to-
he's it depends whether he's a bishop or a pawn. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I will also point out to Kabuki Kid that yes, he snagged alignment, I think, more so from Paul Anderson for the Paladin. The terms law and chaos I think he got from Moorcock, but the way it works, I think it's more Paul Anderson. If I'm remembering correctly. I could be wrong.
Let's not divert too much into the
Alignment argument.
the alignment arc theory and all that sort of stuff.
Because we already did a stream
Well,
on alignment.
we're focusing on evil right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going back to the definition of evil, and I've said before many times that I like to play if I'm playing D&D, I like to have a very sort of medieval feel to my game, my settings, and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say now that if you're trying to almost simulate a medieval feel to the game.
And I did.
What they would perceive as evil would be different to what modern society perceives as evil. There would be
On
certain
some things,
aspects-
yes, but not all.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. Our modern morality is completely different.
Completely different.
Well,
completely different.
well, I mean,
let's look for example. You were considered to be evil in the Middle Ages. if you weren't religious. And
Oh,
You
yeah.
considered evil if you were left-handed.
you were considered evil
Damn
if
it.
you were left-handed. Yes. Yeah. Sinister.
Yeah, because that's because of the whole dry path versus wet path. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a whole thing. It's weird.
Well, it depends
However-
on where you
however-
were, too. So, yeah.
Torture and slavery were normal
Mhm.
and were not considered to be evil. And I do think
They
it's-
eventually changed their mind on that.
Well,
To some
but that's
degree.
the point. We're playing a medieval role-playing game,
Yes.
right?
No. I mean, there's even like popes who said if you're a slave, a Christian slave, if you converted to Christianity, you would be freed from slavery.
Yeah. Well, that's because
So they obviously said that on to some degree that this is wrong. They just didn't apply it universally. Was the thing.
Absolutely, but the point is that, of course, what we perceive to be evil changes, right?
Yes.
You barely need to
I-
go
well,
back.
let's
Use your
look
people
at-
to think you're okay, Elfbait. Fuck off. You Yanks don't get to talk about the Irish not knowing evil, knowing how you people treated the Irish. So you don't get to make that argument.
Who are you saying? Let's actually. That's Elfbay brings up a great thing, though. The concept of racism, like in the modern society, this concept of racism is a bad thing. We consider it an evil, but you go back 1,000 years, it was a defense mechanism. It wasn't evil. It was normal. It's like you protected yourself and your people from the outsider because they were a threat. Yeah, different was dangerous.
Yeah,
Different
Well,
was dangerous.
But it didn't just apply to, everyone talks about racism. People forget being the outsider, which is not something that's really played as much. If you were the outsider, you immediately got blamed for anything negative occurring. So even if you were from a different town and you walked in and all of a sudden sheep started dying.
A window broke, or a window got broken and something got stolen, you were immediately blamed.
The first suspect. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And that's what I'm saying is that, while we're talking about it is, and this is why I said there's a difference between this is why I do my altruism, maliciousness, and neutral. Is okay, neutral is going to do what's going to be right for them. And the other part that comes down to it is, not that everyone's going to talk about it, but while slavery was normalized around the world, slavery as depicted a lot of times on TV is not what a lot of slaves were. Most of them were, house slave. They were treated like dogs, unfortunately. How do you treat your dog?
Depends on the culture and what point in history. Like
Yeah,
slaves.
in Rome, it really depended, but for the most part, they were treated horrifically, savagely.
All people were treated horrifically is the point. But no, I mean, but no, what I'm saying is if you were a different group, then you were tended to go for that. But a lot of it was it's slavery for a certain number of years, or it's slavery until you could buy your freedom. It depended on where you fit. And people also forget, why were you in slavery? You were a criminal? Were you born into slavery? That's what I'm trying to say. Is
maybe you were captured in war.
Yeah. Were you the enemy? Because sometimes they had people enslaved and then they still treated them
or
really
even indentured
well. You're like, what the
or even in indentured servitude, you could argue, is slavery, where people got debt and then became, quote, indentured servants, slaves, to work off their debt.
Sure,
and some people actually, were like indentured servants were worked to death just so they did their masters didn't have to owe them anything after they were done. So
and that's an important thing about slavery and the concept of evil is the amount of people I've gotten in arguments with over this, like they'll say, no lawful good society would have slaves. And it's like, that's a load of shit. Plenty of lawful good societies would have slaves. Slavery, the slave caste is a specific social structure. Now, a lawful good society would treat them well, but there would still be a laid out social structure.
Yeah, if it's
and
an Indian,
it says there in the message, like there'd be they would allow to be upwardly mobile. There'd be the merciful chance of freeing themselves from that bondage.
And a lot of
it depends. It depends if it's like an Indian style world, they wouldn't. Because you were born into that caste,
but
then you're.
That's just it. There's so much variety. Like you can't blanket saying, "Oh, no lawful good society would own slaves." It's like, well, no, that is incorrect.
That's imposing modern morality onto it.
Modern morality, exactly.
Well, here's the other point, though: is you have to look at it as this is why a lot of people left Europe voluntarily to go somewhere else to reset their social class. A lot of times, no one really cared if you were the second, third, or fourth son. You know, it was what the first son got the goods, the second son went off to war, and then the third
went to the church.
But what happened to the other 4 or 5? You know, if you have more brothers,
they were probably dead. They were probably dead.
No, I mean, a lot of them, you know, population still expanded, so it wasn't as, you know, they were having a lot of children. And when you start looking, it's like, okay, so what's going on here? And some of it is that, okay, if you, and it's just like serfs, some freemen decided to be serfs because they could get land. You know, there's a certain thing of what gets in there. And many people, if you look in history, some of them were slaves that got out of slavery and then worked up. Like, you know, some with the Greeks.
They were called, where do you think the name freeman came from?
Oh, yeah.
You're literally a free man.
Right.
Geek, your camera is kind of blurring a little bit.
Between the two. A lot of times people could buy their way.
Oh, there we go. You're good.
But it's a complicated issue. It's, I think, part of it.
No,
I think
for
the
sure,
problem is that is people. This is one of the reasons I do like the Palladium in some ways. Is it said okay and defined it, but again, good characters will determine how they are. Just because you bought the slave, and people forget about this, is the founding fathers, and many of them were still in debt. And because slaves were considered,
Thomas Jefferson. Yeah, Thomas Jefferson could not. He wanted to, but he could not, like, free them because they were not. Because since he was bankrupt, technically they were not his property. But as long as he held the plantation, he could keep them. Because if he foreclosed on the thing, they would have been sold off. Like that. When I learned that, I was like, oh. That's
but you know, people want to simplify it to say, oh well, he owned slaves, therefore bad.
Yeah. Slavery in bed.
He was a man of his time, right?
Yeah, well, and even then he does a, you know, like, and they would take all the good he did, all the great philosophy, the freeing of an entire nation, and the establishment of modern, you know, democracy, and throw all that away, all the good he did, and say, but slavery though.
And the
nuance. What's that?
Oh, well, and I think that's sometimes when people go through it is, and to be fair, we were probably like this as kids too, where it was all black and white. Everything was black and white. And I think at the end of the day is
there is not a level high enough to summon Saxius from his holiday, man. I'm sorry.
I will do my best to summon my inner Saxius. So here we are. General Nutt, we were talking about the evils of slavery in modern morals.
And what's interesting is that, yes, it was, well, here's the other part, though, and people forget about this, is your characters can be slaves. Your characters can start off as slaves and escape. You know, anyone...
You want a rebellion at the table, you put your characters in captivity.
Yeah. Oh, that's a fast way for them to go chaotic evil, man. That is a fast track. And then you go, yeah, you've completely destabilized an entire civilization, and you've killed children, and you burnt down buildings.
I'm just saying that players have this natural
bugaboo
of captivity.
They will fight to the death just to spite you.
No,
to spite you.
Well, we talk about this, but yet I've played Pit of Cthulhu for Conan. You start off as a galley slave. That's where you start off.
If you start out, if you were like imprisoned at the start, they're receptive to it. But if after some time they get captured, or they're about to be, that's when they start getting antsy about it. You know.
And to be fair, if A4, you start off that way, and then they threw you in the pit. You know, at the end of A3. But the other part is
my players enjoyed A4.
This is what it comes down to: is players will fight to the death, but there's optional rules. It says you can subdue any intelligent creature. Well, as soon as you hit 0, guess what? I don't have to kill you. You're now subdued. Which now you find.
Yeah, but they'll treat that as saying, well, you let us live, and they'll get even more angry. You know,
it depends on the characters. You have to get the thing is that. Most of it
I know logically. I agree with you, Omanel. I know what you mean, and I think that's true. But they will feel that way. That you let them live. Yeah,
it's a lack of trust. A lot of times, is what I found is the you know, when people talk about my player agency. Well, and I know that Sean talked to me about that one player who's been playing since 1974. You can't kill me. You know,
you like John Cena. You can't kill me.
No, I had a player meltdown at the table. He was an old school player. He'd been playing every edition since '74, and he couldn't handle that his character died. He just melted out of the table. He was acting like a sulking child. This like 65-year-old man.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
none of the
I
other
played
players could figure out what the hell was going on.
As a player,
I played in Aaron's OSE game, and I got my cleric to like 3rd or 4th level. And now he retconned this because he didn't realize that we had war dogs who were heavy enough to trip this pitfall trap that killed us. But he said, you walked over a pit trap, both of the high-level clerics, we fell to our deaths. And we were like, oh, well, that sucks, but drop a new character. But then he realized, oh, you bought war dogs? Then they would have tripped it first. So, I was like, hey, I got to live! Woohoo!
But I'm saying that is you need the trust. Is I know when I was talking to Shadow one time, he said taking away characters' items. Just some of them would rather just. Why did you just kill me? You broke my sword. And you're just like what? And,
what? You do know that your character isn't a sum of stats, powers, and magic items, dude.
You got to understand that this is the gamer mentality taking over. People are in avatar mode. They have attached themselves to the success of their characters, and they take it personally any setback.
Like, I'll be annoyed. I'll be angry at the DMs. Like, man, for fuck's sake. But I'll be like, I'll.
Back on topic, though, that might be a good time to bring in an evil game to teach them that actions have consequences.
I think that is good. Well, I do like that, and there are times to do that. I think that's one of those that, again, I think what we're talking about is if the players are up for it, and are you going to be comedically evil is what I want to call it, or are you going to be the, I'm okay with that. If you're going to be comic book evil, okay, that's fine. I don't mind that too much. We'll go through it. A lot of stuff is, hey, yeah, but I think that whenever you have evil characters, you really do need, whether it's the session 0 and people talk about, well, safety tools. No offense, as a DM, if all of a sudden I started seeing players doing stuff, I'd say, stop. We're not going there. That's why I always laugh when people are like, well, there's our safety tool. You know what it's called? I'm DM, stop it. You do this again, we're not playing anymore.
Common sense. What always bugged me about the X card, sorry to derail, John, but is
go ahead.
At least the one group that I participated in that uses them was the X card there's no explanation needed. You hit the X card and you move on. It's like, if we can't talk about what the offense was,
how can we resolve the issue in the future?
Yeah, we can't resolve it. It's like, oh, stupid. I get, okay.
Oh, but you just don't understand our lived.
Yeah, there are topics people don't want to go to. Fine, that's fair. But if you're unwilling to talk about it, or at least say what it is, you cannot avoid it.
Yeah, like if someone said to me they had a real bad experience one day where they were surrounded by rats or say spiders or snakes when they were very young. Right, and I have these monsters in the game, and they don't tell me this.
Came for you.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, yeah. But what I'm saying is, I am willing to say, okay, fine, I won't use them, provided you tell me this. If you, after like 50 sessions, and I throw phase spiders at you, and then you say, X card, you're a bad DM. This triggered me, and then I'm like, why didn't you tell me this at the start of the game?
I think
how am I supposed to know this?
I think that's again, when I'm talking about the safety tools, it's the point is that, and I think this has to do with age and how disagreeable we are. The whole thing of, growing up is if I didn't like something, either I just never showed it, I'd say, you know what, not the game for me, I'm out. Or it's like, hey, no, you went way too far. This is not acceptable. And as a DM, I've taken players, this is the one thing I don't like is when the player decides that they're just going to go berserk and kill all the other characters. And they're like, oh, I just started doing this. I said, I'll like, time out. Your character's gone. You don't want to be part of the game. That's fine. And that character just disappears out of the world. I don't really care. I'm like, okay.
People do have this vision of that being the ultimate, the inevitable end of an evil game.
Yeah.
The characters fighting and fighting each other.
And it's certainly a possibility.
It's a possibility, but it's not an inevitability.
No, absolutely.
No. This is when a player just got fed up with playing the game, and then they just decided to be a jerk and kill everyone.
I've had good characters come to blows legitimately in character you know, and parties because they disagreed on a course of action.
Oh, that's okay. I don't mind it. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm just referring when the player just gets fed up with the game.
Being a salty little douchebag and just wanting to flip the tape, basically flip the game board off the thing because he wants to have a temper tantrum. That's about it.
I'm tired of playing this game. I want you all to play a different game. Let's go. You know, like, no, you get out. You know?
We're enjoying this game. The game, you're not a central point of the game. You can just leave and we'll carry on.
Yes. And that's what I'm saying is I don't want to have to deal with those kind of players, you know, and that's,
and I do not blame you.
Yeah,
I do not.
I don't think any of us particularly want to deal with that sort of player. I mean, it's a question of catching it before it happens and recognizing a player has that sort of trait.
I even like playing dumb characters at the table. Like I play Skittles, the paladin in OSE. He's pretty dumb. Like, or rather he's a bit simple. But I don't play him like that when we're dungeon delving. When we're serious about
is he tick simple?
He's got a 7 intelligence, but he's got a 12 wisdom, so he's not like a blithering idiot. But it's like he makes like side comments like to Saxius as NPC, like, you don't even offer the adventurers dental? As he sucks on a lollipop.
DK, I will admit to you now that the encounter that killed Jean's character, Tully, was through a wandering monster roll that was triggered by the fact that you were tapping too much with your 10-foot pole.
Fuck. My bad. Sorry, Tully. I was checking for traps. I'm sorry.
But I think when we're talking about evil is I don't mind if it's a short campaign. I don't mind it if it's off screen. I don't mind if it's comedic.
I feel bad now.
It's that kind of thing. It's the like we talked about it. It's really the bad player that comes into it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, evil tends to attract the bad player rather than the player that wants to be interesting and have an interesting character arc. Because if you say, hey, look, this is what I want, and over the game session, I want him to slowly move towards good, or you say, hey, look, I'm going to have him slowly devolve, you know, as he goes through. I forgot.
The rise like a phoenix, or the fall from grace stories.
Well, or you know, the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Those
for very interesting characters. I'm okay with that aspect, but I want it to be a slow. Either you're rising up or you're slowly going down, up to the point that you understand that your character is going to be doomed if you keep heading this direction. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm okay with that.
I think if you play an evil character, it's summarized in this one statement, right? If you live by the sword, you die by the sword. That fundament. If you go in playing an evil character, you have to be okay with the fact that on some level, your character is going to be hated. And if someone more powerful than you shows up to stop you, you have to be okay with, well, I lost and I died. And that's it. That is the main condition I will have besides everything else about you being good with the party. You have to accept the fact that you are evil and the world is going to react accordingly. And if you get caught, you're going to die.
As General Nuts has just put this, that also accounts for good and neutral characters as well. Adventurers live by the sword and die by the sword. It's all part of being an adventurer. You don't become an adventurer and expect to survive.
Oh yeah, I know, but it's you know, there's kind of the implicit if you don't go out adventuring, then nothing happens. Whereas you don't have to start being a malignant psychopath. You know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I would certainly, if I was running an evil game, I would discourage my players from even contemplating creating characters that were psychopaths. One of the first things I would say, because we go back to the whole session 0 thing, one of the first things I would say is I would lay it down the parameters that, yeah, I'd like to play an evil game. Is everyone up for it? Okay. Right. Now, one of the most important things when creating a character, okay, you create your characters. I want you to play your characters. This whole I'm just playing my character thing, yeah, fine. But don't make your character to be psychotic, because that character is unlikely to survive. and I'd like this campaign to develop. I'd like this campaign to build and go on and see where it goes. But if you play psychopaths, it's not going to go very far.
It's not just going to disrupt the table, the game in that moment, but it could have disastrous consequences for the other players after you're gone, because you could kill important NPCs, and that could mess up the whole world, and people could like those characters. I think that fundamentally is why I don't like evil or even like kind of chaotic characters. You're just being disruptive. You're just being disruptive for no good reason.
I think here's the other thing too is a lot of people who play evil characters don't care about the rest of the party. And you're playing with friends. It's one thing to say, okay, I'm kind of evil or I do some evil things, but you have to realize that it has repercussions on the rest of the party. And as much as people talk about the paladin limiting what other players can play, it's also the same fact of, hey, you have to. I think that if you're going to say this, is you want the players to be around there and to say, okay, we're going to embrace that. The problem I think all too often is, and this is where it comes down, this is why I do like the session zeros, is where people want to hide secrets from all of each other. Up to the point that you're like, why are you even a group together, number one? Number two is you're supposed to act as like someone that's going to work, because even people who have those really bad tendencies tend to still have their group of why they're there. And some of them, the interesting part, which is where you get some of the interesting characters, is I'm evil, so and so can remain good. I am protecting them, and I will do whatever is necessary to protect them from the evils of the world, and I will become exactly so they don't have to become so. And that makes an interesting character.
There even comes a point where the good character realizes this and has to put them down, and there's this tragedy. And even the evil character's like, I know, like, you didn't have to, and he says, no, I did.
That boils down to the player group again, though.
Yeah.
This takes us right back to the first point I made, right back at the start of the stream. Player maturity. Gaming maturity.
Yes. Oh, yes.
All to do with maturity.
I just want to quickly... Sorry, I want to quickly address Jay Richter made a comment. He felt that AD&D was fundamentally skewed towards neutral and good.
Yeah.
I agree mostly. I think AD&D first edition was actually not skewed either way. It was just, it laid out the parameters for the play. I would
agree. BX and OD&D.
Yes.
OD&D and BX were.
Basic, BECME, and AD&D second edition very specifically started gearing towards the good, the heroic, because they were countering the satanic panic, and B, they wanted to shed all of that stuff and say, no, here we're doing heroic high fantasy stories, and that's where the narrative adventures started coming into play full force, opposed to the sandbox.
I'm going to say that there's a little bit of difference in here, because as much as people talk about the assassins, but if you look at the paladin and the ranger, they were so drastically more powerful than most of the other character classes out there.
Yes.
It was the way that quote, and this is why I said the cosmological battle. It was the way that good could put the thumb on the scale so they could beat these much more powerful.
Good has these few silver bullets. Like even in let's say with swords and wizardry, it actually says good aligned cleric, like evil aligned clerics, the way it's implied, they cannot cast cure light wounds. They can only cast cause light wounds. So that means there is that would imply they can't cast light, they can't cast protection from evil, they can't cast purify food and water. That means that those spells are the lawful spells that the cleric, and they don't have the reversal as a list, which means it's implied you should play lawful or good aligned characters.
Right, but that's an incidental conclusion as opposed to the book saying you should be good, which the later books did do, absolutely. But AD&D was very specific. Nope, these are the parameters for each of what you want to play.
I thought Gygax actually said that in 1E, that you're generally heroic characters. I thought that's what I think he
might have. There's a lot in that DMG, but
I mean,
the way the rules are laid out,
necessarily. It's not even necessarily true. He just probably was just paying lip service to it.
As we've already touched on, though, I mean, the rules of AD&D did lend themselves towards a bit of a morally grey game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because it's pulp adventure, to be honest. So
and the sandbox choice and
Conan,
yeah.
Grey Mauser, a lot of them had characters that were more neutral that tended to do good things.
Conan has a sense of honor and morality to him, but it's very different than what we would consider. So it's
well, Conan stole all the time. Conan had no problems getting what he wanted to.
Yeah, because he was doing that more to survive in a harsh world because he knew no other way. That's more out of necessity than
he knew he knew what he was doing. The whole thing is that that's if you actually read the books, he's a neutral character for the most part that tends to.
That's fair.
I mean, he's a neutral character that tends to, by his adventures, do good things in overcoming evil aspects.
Yeah,
that's what I mean by that.
Of the Appendix N that I have read, the only explicitly good character is the one from Three Hearts and Three Lions. He's the only one that is actually like explicitly good in everything that he does.
Even Elric he's a neutral with evil tendencies.
Well, no, I think his society is just outright out and out evil. Like
his society is, but Elric himself.
He gets sadistic play. Like there are scenes where he's like getting glee out of like actually aroused out of stealing the souls of people with story. I don't think that's. No, I don't think. I think it's always in him. He might not have been as bad as other Melnibonéans, but he was still pretty fucking sadistic.
But like I said, he was more of a neutral with evil tendencies rather than just being.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying he was like pure neutral or something like that. My bad.
No. I'm saying that he did that where he realized he went too far and then he tries, coming back. But it makes it. Those are the interesting characters that come into it. It's just like, no one wants to play Dudley Do-Right all the time, which is the way people think Paladin should be played, and no one wants to play
Actually,
yeah.
I like playing good guy characters like all the time. Flawed characters,
yes.
I've put General Nut's comment on screen here because I want to address this. It says it's just easier to create stories for the good guys, and I will say yes. As a DM, it is a lot simpler to keep a campaign going, creating hooks that lean into the motivations of good characters, good players.
I can actually point.
What? Yep.
No, what I'm saying is I think the reason why it's easier is that if you look at this from this perspective of all stories are moral arguments, right? Why do you think it is we don't like it when villains win, right? And when I say villains, I mean like non-protagonists, like when Thanos in Infinity, he's kind of the exception, but he is undeniably the protagonist of that story. So when he succeeds, even though we don't agree with him, we are satisfied because the moral argument of that story is that he is correct in what he's doing, right? We don't like it. We don't like it when those who don't deserve to win. And it is much harder to justify that when you're doing really morally despicable things, because we don't like that in storytelling. Generally speaking, I'm speaking in generalities here.
I'm going to say even when you have the good character die, let's talk about Beowulf. When he fights the dragon.
Or Ned Stark, we'll say, or Ned Stark, we'll say, as an example.
Ned Stark was almost nothing. I mean, everyone's like, "Oh, Ned Stark." Guess what? He was what, first book out of what? All the others?
Out of 5.
Boromir was, but that's something that was being conflicted. Who was being twisted by the Ring's presence.
But he was still a good guy.
Yeah. Well, I like Faramir a lot more. To me, Faramir was a much better character. But the other part is, I think when we're talking about, is it easier if the characters are good, it's easy to get them to do something heroic. Whereas if they're neutral or evil, you have to really to motivate them. It has to be either power or it has to be about power or money or something that they want that's beyond that. Whereas good characters get both. They both get the moral satisfaction, and then they also get the levels and the XP.
Or even if they don't get the monetary satisfaction, they can at least claim the moral victory. Yeah, I'm even saying like it's also, like I said earlier, it's much harder to tempt a good or an evil character to the good side, but it is not even easier, but it's much more interesting to try and tempt a good person to the dark side. You know, like Luke Skywalker vacillating between the light side and the dark is infinitely more interesting than, you know, Anakin slowly devolving into the dark side.
That's only because they wrote it like shit.
Yeah.
Anakin's descent was garbage.
No. I'm going to say this much. Go look at it. Go look at how the Hound was going over from the very first till how his arc went.
Yeah, but he wasn't always like an evil character. He just did bad things.
He was evil at the very beginning. I mean, you know, it was. Yeah,
he was. No, like, okay, he was bound. He was lawful neutral. We'll say he did bad things, but at his heart, he didn't do morally depraved things. You know. That was also because he had a really fucked up life. I don't know if you noticed this.
No,
like half his face got burned off.
He was an evil character at the beginning, and he goes through that arc where he changes, and that's the whole point of a lot of this. Is that's what you want to see. Is you want to see these characters. Like I said, I don't mind evil if they're going to work towards their way. Just like I don't mind seeing good characters go towards evil as they lose their soul. What I don't want to see is the stagnant characters that are just purely evil and they remain evil the entire time with no motivations. I think the harder part is getting evil characters motivated. That's the hardest part.
I think the three key motivations for evil characters are money, power, and fear. And to me, if you can get fear to be the leading one, it makes it a little bit easier, I think. If they're working for an individual that they are genuinely fearful of, who they know will slit their throats in a heartbeat.
Yeah, but I feel that's more of a removing. I don't, from my personal perspective, though, is the first thing my characters do is like, let's get the hell out of here. The other thing is it feels very railroady. If you're going to do that,
because evil, like if you're just playing evil and you don't change, then you like doing a good deed every once in a while isn't interesting, but doing a bad thing as a good character is a temptation. This goes back to the temptation argument, where there's always the chance as a good person that you could fall, but if you've already fallen and you're evil and you never do anything about it, it's just boring because it's static. I think that's fundamentally one of the worst things about evil characters that just are just depraved. They're just boring. You know?
Yeah, I mean,
like
characters are depraved. Yeah, you're right. I mean, another motivation is revenge. If you can set up a situation whereby revenge is the key, that can drive it well.
You know what? I agree with that. I think it's hard though. It's one thing if we have one person. It's hard to motivate an entire group that way.
Yeah,
and that's where I think that's one. Is the things that if you can do it, and I agree with you, if there's revenge in there, and the players are up for it, and you have you have the evil lich. Yes, so and so is evil because he will do anything that's required to kill that lich, and then the good players are going to do what they can, and you have that good interaction. But like you said, but players really need to, before they get evil. I think this is one of those that as a DM, if you want to play an evil character, you better sit down and talk to me about what your plan is, what your motivations are. Why are you sticking with the group? That's the other part. Why are you sticking with the group? Does the group? Nothing is worse than the player whose backstory requires them to be the center character of the entire game, and the other players don't agree to it.
That's so many players.
And I'm going to use the worst one, which is everyone loves Firefly, but let's be honest. I'd be kind of pissed off if I joined a game and say, okay, we're going to play this. And they go, yes, but Mike, I'm going to use GURPS for this example. But you have an intergalactic empire that's all trying to hunt this one person down, and that's going to be the complete focus of the story. I went, hey, what about me?
What about me?
This game, that's what I think comes into it.
If it was like this empire is hunting all of you, that would be one thing. You're all the sons and cousins of a rival faction in the empire. That would be something.
Well, that circumstance comes real quick while they protect that one person who's being hunted. Suddenly, they're all being hunted because they're aiding and abetting.
But again, that still makes it about that one player. What I'm talking about is if all their backstories revolved around this, is what I'm talking about. The problem
with making a player character the center of a story is now you've got to keep that character alive, and then that diminishes the game.
Yeah. I'm going to say one other thing, though, is it's not just that aspect. I think the other part is, when we talk about balance and things, a lot of it is how much screen time do you get as being the center of the story? There's that balance, and if the one character is the driving motivator, not only do you have to keep them alive, which is fine if they're an NPC and all the other players agree to it. That's to me that's an NPC character. Then I don't mind keeping them alive. I don't even have to roll. Okay, they get shot. What are you going to do? What are you going to do about this? It's okay, but that's where it comes down to. It is there has to be so much buy-in from the very beginning, and players need to find out that's why you together. It's one thing like, oh, okay, and to be fair, is OSC. If you look at the original D&D, they popped in and out. You popped in and out. Okay, you're not going to be the main character for this story because the campaign is the world itself, and but if you're playing with the same group week after week, and you're all together. You kind of want to build a story together, and you don't want to feel railroaded because one player decided that I'm going to do, I'm the king, or I'm the prince of so-and-so, and you are going to reestablish me on the throne.
So, the last thing I really want to touch on this stream is in terms of ideas, in terms of coming up with scenarios for people who are running evil campaigns. What sort of scenario options are there for the more story-based games? Obviously,
Conquest.
If it's a
Crusade.
Yeah,
if you're going to another country, like I did with my Line and Dragon game, although I framed it as you guys are invading a realm ruled by evil demonic forces, so your side are the good guys. They won't do any of the bad stuff that the evil guys are doing because this is Shakespearean. But that was just a contrivance so that the players understood you guys are the good guys. It's fine.
But in terms of running an evil game, though, it would just be wanton. It would be conquest for the sake of power.
Of conquest, yes.
Yeah, of conquest, yes. There's also,
or to scourge a greater evil, like your devils fighting against demons or something like that.
There's also the being part of an evil cult. Imagine, for example, turning the module against the cult of the reptile god on its head, so that you're now working for the Spirit Naga. That might be interesting.
It could be.
When you're trying to add to the cult.
That was the end result of the one I ran it. The one survivor, because they ended up getting killed by the Naga at the end. But the one survivor had been charmed by the Naga, and since he survived, we continued the game with him, and he was now an agent of the Naga, going out in the world trying to recruit.
I must say, Mr. Ace Eric, that is most splendid.
It was delightful, yes.
yes.
There's
the old trope of working for a thieves guild or an assassin's guild. That's it can be difficult to keep the stories going, I think, with that one, because you've robbed one merchant, you've robbed 100 merchants. And that does lean itself more towards your roguish games, your thieves and assassins.
There's also the fact that there's not many monsters that are not evil aligned for you to kill. That's kind of the other side of it.
Well, at high level, I agree. At low level, you can find dinosaurs and bears. I mean, a lot of the natural world has a lot of evil.
But if you're fighting those for a long time,
other evils.
Oh
no, you're not. No. I mean, again, for this to work, you've got to break away from the idea of the cosmic forces a little bit, and work more towards evil being a sign of selfishness, working for yourself, or working for an evil group rather than a cosmic entity. So, evil orcs will fight other evil orcs. evil characters would fight other evil characters. They will also fight other good characters. So other adventuring parties would be a good, or how about a kingdom of elves, or that nice jolly little village of gnomes that live in the next dale. These can all become enemies.
Or if we're going for a city crawl, you could have basically kind of this small little war going on, this war of espionage going on between different sects of different evil cults.
Mm-hmm.
Between the Thieves Guild, or there could be monsters underneath. There, like one could be a demi-lich to a Sirac, or another one could be to Demogorgon, or to Asmodeus.
Adherents to two different evil deities.
Yeah, well, you could have multiple if the city is big enough. Like, what would be an example?
You're thinking Waterdeep?
Something the size of Waterdeep. Yeah, Waterdeep. That's a very good example.
Or even evil factions following the same deity. No, our interpretation of that deity is right. No, ours is right.
What's actually funny is that the PC's one is correct because they're actually talking to the evil deity. You know,
maybe. You know, it really depends on what the players are. Again, I think a lot of it is that maybe it's just from my perspective. To get an evil campaign that works well, is it takes a lot more effort and much more mature players.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of us is, for good, it's very easy to say, well, the king calls you in, please rescue the princess. Well, it doesn't matter if you're neutral or good, because everyone keeps talking about Conan. What are you going to do? Well, Conan wants revenge, and I'll get revenge by taking the princess. Oh, okay. Well, all right, fine. I'm in.
Yeah, I want to kill Thulsa Doom. I want to kill Thulsa Doom. That's it. Like, he's not even saving the princess for its own sake. He just wants to really fucking kill Thulsa Doom.
Well, even then, at the the one part where it goes over and like, oh, okay, we'll just steal the princess back because she's worth money. No killing Thulsa Doom. And he's like, all right. So they grab the princess and run away. And it's not until that you can do it that way, and that's why those are pretty easy hooks and adventures. For evil characters, they're gonna be like, well, if we kill Thulsa Doom, do we take over the cult? Do I really want to do this? Do I, guys?
Or even they could even hold. They would probably hold the princess hostage for a double reward, and then sell her into slavery anyway and kill the king. Oops.
I think K5K's nailed it here though with rule 1: aim your evil outside the party.
Yes,
that's got to be something that's drummed in from the very.
But I'm evil. I would turn on the party. No, you wouldn't.
I actually sort of disagree. It's like if you're playing evil, go nuts, be full evil. But it just ties back to the maturity of the players. The players have to be bought in. You don't want to create bad blood at the table.
It might end up that way, but if it to last more than one session, I think you've got to start off at least.
But you can't go in with the default assumption that evil will always turn on itself. Evil can have friendships and relationships.
Oh, you can.
People are people.
Yes.
So,
and like demons and devils might behave like that, but you're human beings.
If you're going to turn on your friends, even if you're evil, there has to be a reason other than you're evil.
Other than I'm just evil. Yeah.
Because that goes back to what I'm saying. That's not interesting. That's just boring.
Yes.
All right. So. Well, and a lot of times when I was a kid, a lot of the players, they wanted to use evil as an excuse. They could kill off other players and do, it was like, I'm going to win the game by killing everyone else off. And when you're playing with an established group, it's like, if you're going to kill us off, we're not going to play with you. And it's self-defeating just from that.
Yeah, and the DM would just say, if I were in that situation, it's like, okay, then an angel shows up and takes your character's head off and restores those PCs. So anyway,
I just simply said character just if they actually. Well, again, I've dealt with it before, but part of it just comes down to it's different. I'm going to bring this up one other thing, which is it is different if you and the player say, hey, look, you're going to betray the group at a certain point, and you lay it out, and you're going to work at that, and with the understanding that okay. At a certain critical time in the game, there will be this. But all players should understand that could happen. And because I've heard a few people said they lost friendships when they did that, even though the game was great, but the people felt so betrayed in it because they didn't know so and so was evil that they ostracized the guy. You're like, okay, you know, everyone has to understand what's going on with that.
Here's one. I'd say it can be.
It's running
I think it
when
depends.
parties doomed to survive.
It
I mean,
can be.
No, anybody can run when in the face of death. It could be a simple morale break, even
Yeah,
a
it
good
can be,
character.
yeah.
The key is how you portray the consequences of your choices. You know, okay, a good aligned person who flees, who runs away when his friends are in danger. He, you know, it's not that he won't do it. It's like he feels like garbage. You know, he will make amends.
and
he will work to
here's
fix
the thing.
problem.
And here's the thing. I don't necessarily think it is. There's some cases where it might be, but here's the difference. If basically it's you have the chance to save them and you walk anyway, or you turn to help the evil, then it is evil. And that's not just evil, that is betraying the party. And that's where I'm like, no.
Again, if the players are okay with it, you know, this is where the ground rules have to really come in. So far, is or you know, it's not that you can't make great stories. Sometimes the best stories have that one critical betrayal, and you're like, oh my god! But the players have to be able to buy into that and say, you know, we might have a betrayal in the game. Just be aware of it. Don't take it personally. We're trying to make a good story from this, and everyone seems like, "Oh my god, a story!" No, look, you can still.
I think because D&D is such a gamist kind of game, and people do get wrapped up in it, and I just am at the point where I'm just going to head it off at the pass. I'm like, most players aren't. I'm just going to be honest. I'm just going to say it. I don't think most players are mature enough to handle this. So I'm just going to head this off at the pass and say, no, you can't play these characters. End of discussion. It's nice to say, well, if you're mature enough, maybe we just have to come to the assumption that most players just aren't.
But that's a fair point of view for your game. It's you lay down the law.
I'm going to say here, Mobius, if you're truly evil, you stop, you enjoy the screams and cries, and you go to the Mercenaries Guild, hire a group of mercenaries to go back in to reclaim the stuff from their bodies.
Their treasure, yeah.
Yes.
That's ultimate evil.
I think
pure evil.
The other parts we have to remember and how Gygax used to play with this with a gaming group that was week by week where the players and the characters changed every night. Mm-hmm. That's part of the thing that, because even when you're looking at it is if your character's out for 2 or 3 weeks, unless you're on vacation, odds are you have like 2 or 3 characters out there. And it makes sense that they would be running good and evil. It's like, oh, I played good on this day. Let me go play an evil character on this time. And the parties would get mixed up and jumbled, and you weren't sure who was going to be there that day. But a lot of us
but the
play
point,
with the same characters every time.
It's just the point that I was driving at. It's just people, and I don't blame people for getting attached to the game because they like playing the game, and people are passionate about this. But with that passion means there's no detachment. They're not being stoic about their character death or this kind of betrayal. So I'm just saying, and it's not even like I'm faulting them for it. I'm just saying as an objective fact that people hold their characters too close to themselves.
Yeah,
so I'm
absolutely.
just like, I don't want people to take this personally because I want them to have fun. So I'm just saying, look, most players can handle it. So I'm just saying, why bother even attempting this and just make a different story that would work?
I'm just saying that the way that we play nowadays is different than how Gygax was playing his game with the big group.
That is true.
That's true. The other part is they probably had several characters. And let's be honest, it's kind of hard to get attached to character. Let's assume that you have a weekly game, but your character has to be training, and then he has to heal, and he has to do this, and he's out of the game for like 3 literal months. What else are you going to do? It's like, oh, okay, so you kind of rotated through, and it was deadly enough that you kind of knew that, oh, my characters will die left and right from this. It wasn't until you get there. But as much as people talk about, oh, I would never do this, I remember hearing in the 1980s about Gen Con having grief counselors for when players' characters died. So this is not a new event.
Spoonie. I brought him a brother, but Spoonie actually had this where when he was running 2nd edition, they were a lot more merciless as DMs. They let them be a lot more ruthless. But then by third edition, he was like, instead of having these 3 wizards leap out and cast magic missile, he had them cast sleep, and it nuked the whole party, and the wizards just slit their throats while they were dead. And he got called aside, and well, these players may only meet like once every so often, and you can't just kill them. And he's like looking at him dumbfounded. It's like, but that's kind of a consequence of playing the game. That could happen.
I thank you, kind Halakar. This is a most generous donation to a most needy cause.
Halakar, I hate you. I hate you. I hate you so much.
And it has been said that when it comes to evil, my accent is useful.
Perverted.
Also, it helps Sexius too, you know.
Oh, well, Sexius's accent, that Danish twang, that certainly does give itself a deliciousness to the evil. But yes, you certainly said it after one game, Omanal, that portraying the bad guys, having an English accent, certainly helps carry the point across. Does it not?
It does, but I think that if we were in the same, if we all had the same accent, we wouldn't notice, and then it would be like.
See, here's the thing, right? For the Americans, it's a posh British accent that's evil. For the English, it's the French, and for the French, it's the German.
And for everyone, it's Russians. You know, don't get me wrong. I love the Russian accent. So I don't really. I make them more the grizzled badass or the surly cynic more than anything else. See, I just love whether it's Romanian or anything else that Slavic. You know, okay, Romanian but I love the Slavic stuff that works so well with it doing, which is I'll switch to the Danish. Works so well with having the whenever you have the vampires and stuff, the more exotic it is, the better it works. You know, it's
Bela Lugosi's Dracula. Like, come on,
exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Why aren't more vampires Transylvanian? For God's sake, that's where the legends came from. You know.
Well, vampires are all over the world.
Well, I mean, when I say vampires, I mean the ones that are in popular media are basically Dracula.
Or the original vampire, the one that used to sit his enemies atop a spiked pole and then sit and eat dinner while he watched them and scream, and their innards
Vlad Tepes. Yeah, Vlad Tepes.
I'm going to say this much: is if you actually look at like the vampire fear that was in the Americas, in the United States, it was really palatable as well. As when they're looking over and they'd say, "Oh, we have to do this," and it's all pretty. You know, the Dracula is the more modern version of it versus the old style, which was.
I will be an absolute pedant to like Kabuki and everyone that when we call him Vlad Tepes, and it is like Tepes, not Tepesh. Tepes is not his last name. I don't remember his actual family name, but Tepes means impaler. That literally, when you call him Vlad, you mean Vlad Impaler or Vlad the Impaler, and Dracula. Yeah.
Halakha, in D&D terms, a big bad villain cannot have an Australian accent because Australia did not exist until the 18th century, and D&D is 400 years before that.
Well, okay, and to you, no Suara, we don't know Vlad's full name because there's so many of them and it's hard to keep track. And 2, Dracula is a title because it means son of the dragon. It was given to him because his father was a member of the Order of the Dragon. So that's not his last name either. So,
and Hans Gruber. I'm going to say now that if there ever was an actor who was superb at playing bad guys, it was Alan Rickman.
Christopher Lee.
Oh, he was so good for that. Well, there's the
late
other one,
great Alan Rickman.
Christopher Lee. What are you talking about?
Christopher Lee, fantastic. Him as Saruman is superb. But
and come on, but as Dracula, he actually played Dracula as well. Come on, he's literally the scene where they're holding up crosses and he's going is where we get clerics turning the undead.
But, Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber was superb, but also King John. Sorry, not King John. The Sheriff of Nottingham. Sheriff of Nottingham with Alan Rickman.
I haven't seen that film in years.
Oh, he was super.
Oh, God, that film was so good.
Boris Karloff, who was Hungarian, but he had the British accent that he trained himself for.
Who was this? Who'd you say?
Boris Karloff. Boris Karloff was Hungarian, and he did. Was he?
His name is William Henry Pratt.
Boris Karloff?
Yes.
I thought.
What did he play in? What did he play in?
Frankenstein.
And he was also in Dracula.
You need to go brush up on your classic movies there, DK.
Yeah, I know I do, dude. There's so many of them, right? I don't have infinite time.
Excuse me.
That's another. That was another.
I guess I was wrong. I thought that he was. I guess it was just Bela Lugosi that had that. But
fuck off, General
Bela
Nut.
Lugosi, who's famously dead, undead.
Yeah.
According to one of the original Gothic songs, bit of Bauhaus.
Yeah.
Blah.
Well, I'll tell you.
I do not say blah blah blah.
Well, you should. It's funny.
It is. Yeah.
Are you playing serious D&D or are you playing fun D&D?
But all D&D is fun.
I like my fun
serious
to be
D&D
serious.
is fun. Yeah. My games are serious and fun. Otherwise, my players wouldn't keep coming back. So
Yeah.
What do you mean? Is it screwball D&D? Is what you
Anyway,
saying?
speaking of evil, and we have approached the witching hour, the hour of the pumpkin, when the geek's fat melon head goes from being a melon to a big orange pumpkin.
He's going to sleep, folks. His brain is melting because he's tired.
Yes, it's going past midnight here. And at the beginning of tonight, I was quite worried that people weren't going to show up because we had an ill mage and we had an elf bait with a poorly computer and Omenel was going to be late. I didn't know whether DK was coming in or not, and Sax just is away. But I think it's actually turned out pretty well in the end tonight. I think we've had a pretty good. I mean,
we didn't stay on track too often, but
I'm going to ask this much: is of all the games that you've played, which was the most fun to play an evil character?
As player or DM?
To play.
I haven't played enough evil characters, so
I've only ever played one evil character, and that was my necromancer. And even though I hated him, I liked him as well. He was a horrible character, but I enjoyed playing him.
My post-apocalyptic character that I mentioned earlier in the stream, if you want, you can watch, where I basically am a mixture of Boone and and Caesar from Fallout New Vegas. They're two characters in there where that was fun.
For me, my Shadowrun characters, because they're always, I guess they're gang members, they were always like literal psychopaths because they start off poor and it's like, maybe this is not the best game for that.
I did play a partially reformed football hooligan who'd recently got out of prison in a Call of Cthulhu game. Mm-hmm. He did the right thing, but he was a bit of a nuh, if you know what I mean.
Nuh-uh. What about you, Major's Musing?
And I suggest you shut up. Right?
Fuck yous.
You don't talk like that to me, or I might be on remand.
I don't care what no prod says. I fight for Ireland.
Did you scream, I'm the governor? I'm the governor? That guy was scary. I mean, that guy was really scary.
Yeah, but what about you, Mages? What's your favorite evil character you ever played?
Well, the one I mentioned earlier was where I deliciously corrupted my friend's ranger.
Turned
out he got a little pissy about it, but it was so funny.
That's the game you play, baby.
But the game I'm running, The Night Below, the Assassin's Guild game, is pretty fun to watch. Although they are slowly shifting into a neutral kind of bent because the evil characters have either died off or left. There's only one evil character left now, who's the leader of the group.
There can be only one.
Yeah, Jeb, don't you be putting me alongside that Vinnie Jones. He's soft. I'd have battered him.
The Cray twins were scarier than you.
Oh,
you know I
get out of it. But no, I have to admit, I mean, one of the things I like about Call of Cthulhu is it really allows me to get my teeth into some really horrific villains, and especially a particular vampiric character who may or may not have made appearances in a few streams from time to time, who I'd like to get involved again. I certainly says, and Monsieur Federic.
You do know that if you ever throw a vampire at Skittles, he is going to try to chop its head off. You do know this, Geek.
You know, the one I didn't like the most was Rigo. Rigo was the one I hated the most for all your villains.
What was wrong with Rigo?
What
was right with him?
I mean, well, Fenelek is like the proper evil, and Rigo was just the kind of evil that deserves to die.
Oh yeah, he was devious. He was properly
yes.
devious. Yes, he was. Yeah. Rigo was good in the first adventure. He'd been corrupted by the book. That was the thing.
Was he good? No, I just remember him go kill off these peasants. You know, like, well, you can.
Oh yeah, okay, he wasn't good. He was. He wasn't good. But...
He just wasn't as evil as he became. You know,
I mean, they're only.
It's all relative. It's all relative. It's all relative. You know.
He was doing a job.
I buried them.
Removing peasants from their suffering. I mean, geez.
Well, I mean, I put a bullet in his brain and then smashed his head into the ground, and was the end of it.
Yeah, and you lost yours the next day.
Well, yeah, but I had to die a hero. I was hoping, you know, it wouldn't have been right if he'd escaped. I would have felt really cheated. I mean, I felt the same way the first game was. I went over like, what do you mean? I just the whole visuals just worked out great, and it's like, oh, we lived. Okay.
Barely.
No. We kind of kicked his ass. I mean, it wasn't.
Oh, you did. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Really? But your doom was inevitable, unfortunately.
As all doom inevitably is.
Yes. Yeah. And on that note, the end of this stream is now inevitable. So I just want to thank Elfmate for popping in earlier. He was here for a good couple of hours, and he's been streaming this to his own channel tonight. It's like a shared stream.
I got to start doing that myself now that it's an option.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
If ever I start doing YouTube stuff, I may have to do that as well.
Yes. Thank you, Omanal and DK, and thank you, Sean, as well. Do you want to shill your channel, Sean? You got anything in the pipeline?
I do. I have a few videos that got delayed because my voice was shredded, but obviously I think I can start recording again.
It's improved as the stream's got on.
Yeah. I've been taking in water and liquids as we've been going too.
Good man.
I saw the D&D movie on Friday. I'm going to review that. I want to talk the OGL controversy, catch up. I kind of missed the boat on that when it happened, but plus, of course, more review caps. I've got 4 for each, 4 of Night Below and 4 OSE review caps, just kind of sitting there waiting to be produced.
Okay, but we have to ask, just to short circuit it, is it a thumbs up or a thumbs down for the D&D?
Thumbs down, yeah. I was about to say, just as a quick, what is your rating out of 10? Just
marginal thumbs up. I give it kind of a 6. It's light fun, but it's kind of got some writing issues. I do like the characters, and I was surprised by how much I like the relationship between Michelle Rodriguez and Chris Pine's character. That was actually kind of interesting. But there's a lot of tropes, like a lot of the D&D references are just nods. They're superficial. They're meaningless.
Yeah, like the one they do in the trailer with the intellect devourer, where it will consume all the intelligence of all smart people and it just walks by. And
walks by. And
well, that's just rude.
Yeah, it was a gag. It's a fun movie. It's not.
Okay.
It's not the 2000 movie. Is not a complete shit show, but it's certainly not great. I'll go into more detail when I'm still sort of writing up how I'm laying out my thoughts. But
that's all I wanted was a thumbs up, thumbs down. You went into
marginal thumbs up. It's fun, so it's got that and
yeah.
And on that note, I'm going to bring this stream to a close. Thank you all for contributing. It's been entertaining as always, and thank you everybody in chat. Been the usual mixture of bickering and some in there we've had some constructive comments, and yeah, it's what you expect from chat these days. But thank you for taking part. I'll be back again this Friday because I haven't got a fundraiser to go to this Friday. For those who weren't here at the start, we raised £700 last Friday, and I won money. Hey, and I've bought another Fighting Fantasy book as well. Right, so I shall see you all Friday and again next Wednesday. Take care till then. This is
Bye.
I'm the Old Geek, and good night all.
Bye bye.